Hello everyone, today's video will be a bit shorter because we are in the last chapter of this work. I am waiting for more chapters to be able to bring the recap to you, so let's go to the video. Are you ready? Let's go. We are in a room where there is a person lying down, apparently sick, and several people around. The one lying down is named Xiao. A woman is by his side, crying, for we do not see old Xiao in his better days. The fifth disciple, Shan, says that the old man is already exhausted, and asks the senior disciple Kivan what they should do. Kivan says the answer is obvious. Sivan says he will go out to look for another elder to learn from, as staying there praying for this old body would not help Sivan get any stronger. Kivan thinks that this kind of person who goes out on a simple mission and comes back crippled and wounded is a complete waste of time for them. Kivan knows that if it weren't for him exposing the martial arts of the elder, surely the old man would not die like this. The second and third disciples, Haoran and Feng, just agree with Kivan. The fourth disciple, Zheng, says that it was about time for this old man to die. Zheng had been looking forward to this for a long time. Zheng emphasizes that all those who still cherish this monk time should be treated as one. The young master would become the disciple of the second elder, who has the highest number of female disciples. The girl who was there listening to all this gets angry at everything and clenches her hand while cursing everyone there. She stands up and shouts at everyone that if it weren't for Xiao, none of them would be able to surpass the cultivation limit and become immortals. She points out that it might now be too late, and the old man may turn into a pile of bones. She screams that all there were just ungrateful animals. This leaves everyone extremely angry. Feng approaches her and slaps her face, throwing her backward. As she fell to the ground, Feng tells her to have more respect. Feng was clearly irritated by her words and asks who she thinks she is to speak to him that way. Chivan draws Feng's attention, saying, if this poor thing wants to stay with the old man, let her stay. As Kivan was picking up some things, he says he had already taken everything of value that the old man could have. Feng, while carrying some things, smiles, saying the useless old man was a perfect match for his useless slave. The woman was still on the ground, trembling as she tried to stand up, thinking all there were nothing but traitors. She finally manages to get up from the ground and, with tears in her eyes, wonders how these traitors could do this. As she was on the ground, the elder calls her. She runs back to the bed's edge, asking if Xiao was okay. Because the ungrateful ones had already left, and she would take care of him. Xiao says that after he took her to the top of the mountain, he never asked if she wanted to become his disciple, nor did he even try to guide her cultivation. Xiao sighs and asks if she hates him. She's a bit embarrassed to answer and says she knows her roots and bones were not so good for cultivation. This woman's name is Ji. She explains that, in the beginning, Xiao saved her from a slave trader, and for that, Ji has always been deeply grateful. Since that moment, Ji never had any complaints. She emphasizes that she only hates the injustice of the heavens and the treacherous villains, for a good person never dies a good death. Xiao begins to sit up in bed and says that if he had accepted her as a disciple before. Xiao begins to cough before finishing the sentence. Zhi is worried about him. As Xiao looks at his hand, he notices there was blood on it and says, it seems he is about to die. Zhi kneels on the ground and kneels before Xiao. Zhi starts shouting, saying that if Elder Xiao does not hate her, then accept her as his disciple now. In the future, she will surely kill all those traitors who left here and avenge Elder Xiao. She makes it very clear that she will not stand up until Xiao accepts her as his disciple. This leaves Xiao somewhat impressed. Xiao turns to the front, places his hand on his chest, and says he might be on the brink of death, but he is not stupid. Then, Xiao asks Ji if he accepts this, wouldn't he just be hastening Xi's death? Ji, concerned for Xiao, asks him to stop moving around. Xiao takes a small bottle in his hand and says that this pill bottle is the last essence of condensation. Even though it's not great, it's the only thing he could offer her at the moment. Seeing this, Ji's eyes fill with tears. Ji asks Xiao to lie down and not worry so much about her, but Xiao tells Ji it's okay. He wouldn't die so quickly. After saying this, Xiao starts to cough and feels something very strong, dropping the bottle. The bottle breaks on the floor while his eyes start to close. He sees Zi saying she was wrong and didn't need to become his disciple, but he needed to wake up anyway. Xiao starts to wonder if this really is his death. He thinks Ji is crying too loudly and it's hurting his ears. Xiao thinks he's very annoyed, and the reason for this is for not having accepted Ji as his apprentice earlier. He thinks his end has really come, but suddenly, a voice says, officially launching the disciple bonus system. Xiao is a bit confused seeing this and wonders what it could be, but he receives an infinite gold pill. Just one of these pills contains the equivalent of spiritual energy of about 10,000 essence gathering pills. This pill contains so much energy that it can be used to advance a whole realm of cultivation or heal any kind of injury. Xiao takes the pill in his hand and rubs it on his face while crying, saying he's been in this world for 20 years since he crossed over, and finally, the hack has arrived. 20 years ago, I, Xiao, arrived in this world due to a car accident. I thought I was the main character of an illustrious family with exceptional talents. I even reached the foundation building stage before I was 10 years old. But after I entered the Hongmeng sect, my cultivation stagnated, and I never made any progress again. I became the laughingstock of everyone. However, the heavens have given me a second chance. Xiao asks the system what this reward he received is. The system informs that, as the name suggests, the host will receive things in return for everything given to his disciple in the name of the master. Xiao asks if this also applies to skills and knowledge that his disciples receive. The system responds that, yes, it also counts under the teachings of the host. If the disciple's cultivation values advance or gain insights, the host will receive double the value. In simple terms, if the host transmits the equivalent of 200 days of cultivation to the disciple, the host will receive back the 200 days of cultivation. Similarly, if the disciple gains understanding of some type of sword technique under the teachings of the host, the same will receive X times in return. This means that the host will directly understand the sword skill to the level X. Xiao places his gold pill in his hand and asks the system if he gave this pill to his disciple, he would receive X times in return. The system says that, no. Items received as a reward from the system cannot be rewarded again. However, if the master teaches a disciple the skills that were given by the system, and the disciple gains new insights, it is not considered something from the system. Then, the master will receive a second reward. Xiao says he understands, and it's not something as simple as an infinite reward loop. Xiao decides to eat the pill, as he should take advantage of the opportunity. After consuming the golden pill, Xiao starts to emit a strong glow and rises from the realm to the golden core in one go. While all this was happening, Ji was still kneeling near Xiao's bed, trembling and crying, begging him to wake up. She says in a trembling voice that she doesn't want anything else, not revenge, doesn't need to be his disciple, much less receive gifts like essence pills. Ji just wants her master to wake up. Suddenly, Xiao places his hand on Ji's head, saying she should remember the first thing her master will teach. Ji lifts her head, with her eyes full of tears, surprised by this. As soon as Ji looks at her master, she sees that he is completely fine. Xiao is physically healed, with a strong energy coming out of his body. He tells Ji that if she has enemies, she should seek revenge and face everyone with ferocity, and the revenge should be doubly severe. Meanwhile, in another location, Feng knelt before a man, pleading for him to take him as his disciple and offering all of Xiao's secret martial arts in exchange. This place where Feng was is the Hongmeng sect, 6th peak. The man took the scroll offered to him by Feng and remarked that Xiao had indeed made an excellent disciple. The man pointed out that Xiao, who once was the star of the Hongmeng sect and considered himself unparalleled, ended up in such a state. It's unfortunate. This man is the elder of the 6th peak and head of the discipline hall, Wang Na. The elder told Feng that if he truly wished to become his disciple, it could indeed be possible. But the elder showed a ruler called the Ruler of Repentance. This ruler is capable of dissecting a person's spiritual roots. The elder said that if Feng could extract Xiao's spiritual root, then he would accept Feng as his personal disciple. However, Feng should be careful when holding this ruler, as once it comes into contact with blood, it won't easily come off without a proper method. Feng held the ruler and told the elder not to worry, as he, Feng, would not let the elder down. However, suddenly, a very strong attack came from behind Feng, hitting him in the back and throwing him into a wall. This attack left Feng severely injured. When Feng looked down, he was utterly terrified by what he saw. In the attack, his body was wounded, and his blood came into contact with the ruler, which was sucking his energy out of his body. This caused Feng to fall to the ground, screaming in pain and crying in despair. As he lay on the ground, he screamed, saying he couldn't die there as his path to immortality had just begun. Elder Wang Na, confused by all this, asked who could have done this. Looking up, the elder saw Xiao and Ji flying. Xiao looked at Wang Na and said that if he really wanted his spiritual roots, Wang Na should come and get them himself. Wang looked up and apologized to Xiao, saying it was just a joke he was playing on Feng and nothing serious. But, while saying this, Wang was actually wondering how Xiao had such a strong aura, as Feng had said Xiao was on the verge of death. It didn't make any sense. Xiao replied that if that was the case, then all was well. But unfortunately, Xiao wasn't joking. Wang Na. Xiao began to use his magic power and several swords appeared around him. Wang Na, seeing this, was impressed, as this was the Kanglang sword art technique. This reminded Wang Na of something. When I and Xiao entered the Hongmeng sect, Xiao gained the sect master's favor by creating the Kanglang sword art and received most of the cultivation resources. Luckily, I advanced to the Golden Core realm first, and Xiao became useless. Wang Na created a barrier around himself to defend against Xiao's attack. While Wang Na was inside his barrier, he told Xiao not to be foolish to attack him, as Wang Na had already advanced to the second level of the Golden Core. This meant that Xiao would have no advantage in this attack. As soon as Wang Na finished his sentence, his barrier was easily broken by Xiao's attack. This left Wang Na completely terrified by Xiao's strength. While Wang Na wondered how this could be happening, Xiao, with a slight smile on his face, asked if this was what a person of the second level of the Golden Core could do. Xiao's attack began, and the sword started flying around Wang Na, who was in shock thinking that the power Xiao was demonstrating was of the third level of the Golden Core, or even higher. As Wang Na pondered the power demonstrated by Xiao, one of the swords hit his hand, causing him to scream in pain. Wang Na emerged from the midst of the swords and shouted at Xiao, saying that if he dared to kill Wang Na, the sect would not forgive him for such an act. Xiao quite calmly questioned Wang Na if that could really be true, and highlighted that he was curious to know what the sect would be capable of doing once Wang Na was dead. Xiao turned his attack back to Wang Na, who, with no other option, decided to use a mysterious artifact. Upon using this artifact, a shield rose in front of him, protecting him. Wang Na thought to himself that unfortunately, this artifact only had 3 charges, and this was the last remaining charge. Wang Na considered this a huge loss, as he had intended to use this last charge when he was advancing to the nascent soul stage. Xiao observed this and thought to himself that Wang Na really did have some tricks up his sleeve. Xiao remarked that it seemed Wang Na had received quite a few gifts over the years. Suddenly, black lightning started to strike everywhere. Wang Na yelled Xiao's name, questioning if he really intended to continue with this. Xiao, with a determined look, questioned why he should stop. Xiao continued his attack, leading to a massive explosion. Amidst it all, Wang Na couldn't believe this was happening to him. Xiao's attack began to destroy everything around. After the attack ended, everything nearby was destroyed, and a huge hole was created on the ground. In the midst of all this, Wang Na was severely injured, cocking in pain. When Wang Na saw Xiao approaching, he was completely terrified and began screaming for Xiao not to come any closer. Xiao, as he approached, asked if the shield Wang Na was using was a top-tier artifact, classified as mysterious, because it managed to keep him alive in this world. Artifacts are divided into 5 levels: mortal, mysterious, earthly, celestial, and finally, immortal. Within each level, there are 4 grades: low, medium, high, and supreme. The shield used by Wang Na was of the mysterious class, high grade. Even within a sect, this would normally be considered a sect-defending treasure. Xiao hadn't expected Wang Na to have such a valuable treasure tucked away. Xiao didn't care much about that. In any case, it was going to end there. Xiao drew his sword and aimed to deliver a finishing blow, but Wang Na created one last barrier around himself and pleaded for Xiao to spare his life. Xiao paused because he heard a voice. This was Zhang He, the leader of the Hongmeng sect. He told Xiao not to act impulsively, as fights among sect members went against the sect rules and could lead to expulsion for both. Xiao turned to the sect leader and laughed, creating a small amount of energy in his hand. Wang Na, seeing Zhang He, thought the gods had given him a glimmer of hope. So he began to beg for help, saying Xiao was beating up everyone there. But in the blink of an eye, Zhang He used his power to strike Wang Na's face, telling him to shut up. Zhang He stated that Wang Na should come to the inquiry pool of the disciplinary hall so they could better analyze and see who truly deserved to be expelled from the sect. Wang Na, severely beaten on the ground, said in a trembling voice that it wasn't necessary. Zhang. He turned to Xiao and congratulated him for breaking through the Golden Core realm after so many tribulations. Xiao thanked Zhang He and said that if he hadn't evolved, he would probably have become someone's target, and his spiritual roots would have been removed. Wang Na shouted that it was a misunderstanding, and he would accept the sect's punishment. However, Wang Na said he hoped Xiao wouldn't use this against him in the future. Xiao crossed his arms and said that, out of respect for the sect leader, he would leave Wang Na alive for now. Xiao, looking back, saw Feng dragging himself on the ground. Xiao pointed out that Feng had committed an even greater crime than Wang Na, as betraying his master and repaying kindness with hostility was unacceptable. Therefore, Feng should be banned from entering the sect, and all his cultivation should be completely extracted. Feng tried to ask for the sect leader's help, but Zhang He simply said it was up to Xiao to handle as he wished. Ji, hearing this, started to run and said there was no need for her master to act. Feng, seeing this, called Ji useless and launched an attack against her. Ji stood completely still as the attack approached. Then, she began to gather magic in her hand and effortlessly defended against Feng's attack. This left Feng completely paralyzed, as Ji had been considered useless until recently. Feng asks when she had learned the Kanglang sword art. Hearing this, Xiao begins to explain that 3 days ago Zhai was sitting. The system pops up with Zhai's specifications. Name, Yan Nu, True Identity, Disciple, Comprehension, 260, Root, 15, Talent, Innate Immortal Sword. Inactive activation requires reaching the Foundation Establishment stage to gain recognition from the Lin family's ancestral sword embryo. Xiao thinks to himself how incredible innate immortal sword talent is. Ji asks what an innate immortal sword is. Xiao, with a suspicious look, says it's nothing much, just thinking that Ji might have talents with swords. Xiao says he would look for Feng so Ji couldn't be defenseless. Xiao cuts down a tree with his Kanglang sword art. He explains that this technique was created by him years ago and emphasizes that even if Ji could learn a little, it would be great. Ji forms a small sword with her magic and asks if it's something like this. Xiao says yes, she's doing very well. The system notifies that Ji has entered into the Kanglang sword art. Another window opens, stating that teaching the disciple the Kanglang sword art, a mortal grade sword art, rewards tenfold. The host is rewarded with the sky-slicing technique, high-level mysterious grade. This makes Ji the real treasure there. Ji approaches Feng, preparing to step on him, and starts saying that even with all the guidance from Master Xiao, Feng still couldn't learn to use this technique. Ji stares down at Feng, who begs Ji to stop. Then, she asks who the useless one is now and steps on his chest, causing Feng to scream in pain. Ji turns to her master Xiao, saying that the spiritual root of the traitor Feng has already been destroyed, and asks Xiao to verify. Xiao, looking at her, says, "She did a great job." Zhang He says that now Xiao has explained his punishment, it's Wang Na's turn to be punished. Zhang He asks to take Wang Na away to resolve the matter. Xiao turns to leader Zhang He and asks when Xiao said everything was finished. The leader Zhang He, a bit confused, asks Xiao what he's talking about, since a while ago, Xiao said he would spare Wang Na's life. As soon as Wang Na hears this, he gets up worried, asking what more Xiao wants from him. Xiao gives a slight smile, saying he indeed intends to leave Wang Na alive, but turns with a cold look and says he won't let Wang Na go just like that. Xiao says it will all depend on Elder. Wang Na's sincerity. Wang Na starts to smile and takes out a bag, saying all his treasures are inside. Then Wang Na offers the bag to Xiao, hoping it will be enough. Xiao uses his magic to quickly grab the bag, saying Elder Wang Na is a wise and truly enlightened person. Xiao thanks Wang Na for the gift, bids him farewell, and calls his disciple Ji to leave. As the two were leaving, Ji highly praises her master Xiao, who in turn says they would rest today, as tomorrow he himself would guide Ji's cultivation. Wang Na just watches all this. Leader Zhang he bids farewell to Wang Na and asks him to take care. Wang Na, with a battered face, is extremely annoyed with everything and thinks this won't end here. The next day, at the 7th peak, Xiao was checking what was in the bag he received from Wang Na. As Xiao looks through it, he sees there were a lot of things, even elixirs good for the Golden Core realm. Even though they were not of good quality, they would still serve. Xiao picks up 2 scrolls in his hand, one of mortal grade and the other of earth grade. Xiao thinks that this medium-grade primordial technique would be perfect for Ji to establish a foundation. Xiao looks over everything there and thinks that, amidst it all, the most valuable item would be this sword called the 5-element seal, earth grade, intermediate level. Xiao thinks none of it would be useful to him, as he needed nothing there. Then, Xiao decides to give everything to Ji, because when it comes to treasures, the system's rewards will always be better. Now that Xiao had looked through almost everything, only one thing remained: a small bag filled with high-level spiritual stones. Xiao thinks Wang Na must have mined a lot in recent days to have all this. Xiao thinks now it's all his, and he's rich. So maybe he'll create a small village one of these days. Ji arrives and knocks on the door, saying Xiao had told her to come in 2 hours for training. She asks if she can come in. Xiao says yes, asks Ji to sit with him. The cultivation realms for practitioners are postnatal, innate, chi refinement, foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, separation realm, integration realm, Mahayana realm, transcendental realm. Each realm is divided into 10 minor realms. The postnatal realm strengthens the blood energy to temper muscles, bones, and skin, enhancing physical strength and its quality. The innate realm fills the blood and chi to form internal energy, increasing the power of martial arts and physical defense up to the transcendental realm. Should you reach it, you may ascend to immortality, but this is only a level few have reached. Xiao and Ji sit opposite each other, touching hands. Xiao says he will start by teaching the primordial technique. He asks Ji to focus on comprehending with dedication. Ji agrees, so they begin. While Ji is extremely focused, Xiao is guiding her, telling her what she should do. Xiao says to circulate the qi behind her body a few times to gain understanding. The system window pops up again with the same specifications as before. Xiao sees that Ji only has 15 spiritual roots, so Xiao asks the system what the score of an ordinary person would be. The system shows it's between 50 and 60 points. This explains why Ji easily learns techniques, but when it comes to cultivation, she has a lot of difficulty advancing. Xiao decides he himself will have to force qi for her to refine her essence and marrow. Xiao places his hand near Ji's head, and energy starts to envelop her, passing through her entire body. Ji opens her eye, and now she is at the 10th stage of the postnatal realm. Ji is very worried about Xiao and questions him, asking why he did this, as providing qi directly like this can be extremely costly. It might cause the person to lose cultivation, regress realms, and even injure the provider's body. Xiao places his hand on her head and tells her to be at ease, as her master is very well. The system pops up for Xiao, notifying that he sent 100 days of cultivation to his disciple, and thanks to this, he gained 500 days of cultivation. Xiao, seeing this, thinks he's actually much better off than before. Xiao gives a bag full of riches to Ji, saying all this was a gift from him to her, as before he didn't have much to offer, but now he can provide good things. Ji, seeing this, becomes extremely happy, as she had never received such treatment before. The system shows Xiao gave Ji a 3rd-grade Huan pill and 10 2nd-grade pills. Then, he will receive 15 times this. The system shows he received a 4th-grade Huan pill. Ji thanks her master Xiao again for having saved her life in the past and now teaching her for the future. She says she will serve him at any time he needs. The system shows again that Xiao gave 17 martial arts to Ji, then received 20 times reward for this. Xiao obtained a celestial grade, supreme ranked 1,000-mile sword art. Xiao tells Ji not to be so modest with him, as everything that's his is also hers. Xiao asks Ji to train carefully today. After she has managed to absorb this, he will give her more than qi directly for her cultivation. Ji is surprised, as there will be next times. The system shows Xiao gave Ji the martial art 5-element seal, mid-rank earth grade, and for this, he was rewarded 20 times, receiving a gentle wandering sword, supreme rank Earth grade. Ji doesn't understand how her master can give her so much qi. So, she tells him to be more careful, as this might be charged, it doesn't seem safe. Xiao smiles, saying he is very well, and if Ji does not believe him, she just has to wait a little, as he will soon go into seclusion for 3 days. Xiao guarantees that he will rise to level 5 of the Golden Core realm. Ji gets excited and says she will protect Xiao while he is cultivating. If anyone comes close, she will take care of it. Xiao tells Ji to be careful and not to stress too much and to practice properly. Ji says it's okay and will practice right now. Xiao opens the system window to check all his rewards. Xiao takes the Huan pill in his hands and thinks he had heard about it before. This pill can only be cultivated by someone who has a nascent soul. The heavenly materials required are the rarest to find for 4th grade elixirs. Xiao thinks that even if he searched the entire Hongmeng sect, he probably wouldn't find even 5 of these pills. But that still wasn't really what Xiao was eyeing, as the reward Xiao most wanted is the 1,000-mile sword art. This art is practically the pinnacle of all fencing. If Xiao combines the 1,000-mile sword art with his new high-level Earth-grade sword, Gentle Wandering Sword, it becomes basically unbeatable. Xiao gets excited about all this and decides to test the real power this combination could have. Xiao sends a small attack at a stone and easily destroys the stone. Xiao is surprised by the 1,000-mile sword art, as this skill emphasizes the way the sword is manipulated. Xiao thinks that if he gathers more swords, or gets more valuable swords, it would be child's play to challenge stronger realms. But that would be for another time, as now Xiao will assimilate the cultivation received from the system. Xiao is quite confident this time. He believes he might reach, or even surpass the 5th stage of the Golden Core. Meanwhile, in the Wang sect market, Zhang and Li Shan were walking carefree until, out of nowhere, 2 women start commenting on Xiao, saying he recently ascended to the Golden Core, and that Xiao had a confrontation with Elder Wang at the 6th peak, and apparently Xiao defeated Wang in a humiliating way. This caught their attention. The 2 women highlighted that Xiao was willing to sacrifice his own spiritual roots to assist his disciple. The other woman says that's so perfect and envied people who had a master like that. The 2 were completely in love with Xiao. Li Shan, upon hearing this, starts to think, could Xiao really have been able to help and pass his skills to that Ji? The other 2 women who were with Wang Zheng ask him and Li Shan why they left the 7th peak. Wang Zheng answers the women that everything they were hearing was a lie, as Xiao was a complete idiot who mistreated his students, and that's why they left there. While Wang Zheng and Li Shan were with these women, Lin Haran was just. Watching all this, he starts to think that Xiao, besides having a new disciple, was still able to move to the Golden Core. Not to mention that Elder Wang was not able to defeat him. Lin Haran wonders if this could really be true. So, he decides to see with his own eyes. At the gate of the 7th peak, a man stands in front of Xiao and Ji. This man says he was sent there on behalf of the sect leader Zhang He. This man introduces himself and says he is Ye Chen, the senior disciple of Zhang He. Ye Chen says he came to warn that the great sect competition will be in 100 days, so Xiao should prepare for such an event. Ye Chen looks at Ji and apologizes for what he is about to say, but in Ye Chen's view, Ji is a seemingly weak person. By her talent in the great competition, Ye Chen thinks she will lose and cry over the defeat. Ji gets angry when she hears this, but Xiao steps forward and says that Ye Chen has a somewhat limited view. Ye Chen is a little startled by this. Xiao says that Ji was a person completely without cultivation 3 days ago, and now is already at the 10th stage of the postnatal stage. Xiao asks Ye Chen what he thinks of Ji's rate of evolution if she really seems irrelevant. Ye Chen is dumbfounded and can't believe what he heard and asks Xiao if he is joking. Xiao says that if Ye Chen doesn't believe him, then Zi is free to show who's boss. Zi obeys immediately and starts to emit flames from her body. Ye Chen, scared seeing this, says that this really is the 10th stage of the postnatal realm, but Ye Chen can't understand how this is possible. Lin Haran, who was hiding and watching all this, is also surprised. Xiao turns back to return to his realm and says that anything is possible. Zhi makes a face proving Ye Chen wrong and saying it served him right. Lin Haran, still hidden, thinks that a useless person like Zhi could not have risen in such a way with her own talent. Clearly, Xiao used his qi to help Ji. Lin Haoran thinks that the person who directly transfers their qi to another person faces major problems, including in their cultivation. Lin Haoran can't believe Xiao went to such lengths to help Ji. Then, Lin Haoran thinks it would be a good time to extort some things from Xiao. After all this, in the hall of the third peak, Lin Haoran is before Elder Meng Yu, who is asking Lin Haoran if everything he said is true, that Xiao took everything from Wang Na and transmitted the peak of the supreme technique to his disciple. Meng Yu asks if there is anything they can do. Lin Haoran tells Meng Yu that he is the strongest in the sect and should receive the most resources. What Xiao is doing is just squandering the sect's resources. Hearing this, Meng Yu gives permission for Lin Haoran to personally take care of it. Meng Yu emphasizes that if Lin Haoran really manages to defeat Xiao, then he will be accepted as a direct disciple. Lin Haoran thanks him for the opportunity. Meanwhile, in the training room of the 7th peak, Xiao and Ji are sitting. Xiao asks Ji if she is ready, as today she will break through to the inner realm and cleanse her meridians. Xiao notes that if everything goes right, in the future, Ji will be able to cultivate with less effort and more ease. However, for that to happen, she will have to endure very strong pain. Ji says she is ready and remembers everything Ye Chen said before and promises that as soon as she gets stronger, she will not accept this anymore and everyone will pay attention to her. Xiao sees that although Ye Chen has been spoiled by the sect leader, the encounter between Ji and Ye Chen was very good. It made her more motivated, and it is this motivation we need. Xiao thinks this really is the moment for Ji to break through to a higher realm and perform a cleansing on her meridians. Xiao takes a small bag in his hand, and from it takes out a 4th-class meridian cleansing pill. Xiao was able to buy them thanks to the riches he took from Wang Na. Xiao decides to start and prepares to begin the training. As soon as it starts, Ji tries to concentrate as much as possible. Joy thinks this is more painful than she was thinking, but after the pain passes, Ji feels as if her whole body becomes lighter. A system window opens, informing that Xiao transferred 200 days of cultivation to Jai, increasing her aptitude by 70 points as a reward. This was doubled, resulting in 400 days of cultivation and the low-class autumnal water sword technique of Earth rank. Xiao, seeing this, thinks it is finally done. Xiao is very satisfied, as the feeling of gaining something is very good. Now Xiao is at the 6th level of the Golden Core. Juri finally opens her eyes and feels much better, as she is now at the 1st innate level. Juri asks if this is a technique to purify the meridians and marrow, and completes asking if now that she has reached the celestial realm, if this was enough to face Ye Chen. A window opens again, showing Ji's information. Name, Zhenu. True identity. Disciple. Understanding. 260. Aptitude. 85. Talent. Innate body sword. Not activated activation condition. Reach the foundation realm. Obtain recognition of the ancestral sword embryo of the Lin family. Xiao laughs and touches Ji's face, telling her to be brave and take Ye Chen down. If Ji defeats Ye Chen, Xiao promises to take her to the World Genius Challenge. Ji is extremely happy with this, asking if she really can do all this. Suddenly, someone starts knocking on the door, leaving Ji and Xiao surprised. This person calls for Xiao, saying that one of his disciples had been seriously injured while collecting medicinal herbs for his treatment, and asks Xiao to come outside to take a look. Xiao, already suspicious, decides to follow. As he was leaving, Ji was just wondering who it could be and if her master really had other students besides her. As soon as Xiao opens the door, Ji is surprised to see Lin Haoran lying on the ground. Lin Haoran, with a trembling voice, calls for his master, referring to Xiao, and says that unfortunately, he is still weak because he managed to recover only 1 blood dragon plant, and asks Xiao to take the plant. Ji screams furiously that Lin Haoran is just a traitor who swore loyalty to the 3rd peak and asks what he is doing there. Lin Haoran, still lying on the ground, tries to explain with a still trembling voice, saying it's just a misunderstanding and the only reason Lin Haoran entered the 3rd peak was to get this life-saving plant for his master. The disciples of the 3rd peak's elder Meng Yu say that Lin Haoran almost died to get this plant and doesn't need to speak to him in that way. Meng Yu adds, saying that for 3 consecutive days Lin Haoran had kneeled asking Meng Yu for help, and this moved Meng Yu. Zhi doesn't accept any of these words, saying they are just distorting the truth. It's clear that Lin Haoran betrayed Xiao and is now trying to navigate the situation with this ridiculous act. Xiao asks Zhi to calm down and leave this matter to him. Xiao asks Lin Haoran why he is there if he had already sworn loyalty to the Third Peak's elder. Xiao smiles with a cold expression and asks if Lin Haoran really wants to return to his side. Lin Haoran kneels in front of Xiao, saying he recognizes the weight of his sins, and for having betrayed his master, he is unworthy. However, Lin Haoran begs for forgiveness and asks that Xiao accept this blood dragon herb. The disciples of Meng Yu, watching this scene from afar, start to think that Xiao is very healthy and doesn't need this herb. Another disciple says that Lin Haoran's talent is deteriorating, and if he doesn't get a Class 4 pill, his future in cultivation will be very bleak. The two look at Xiao, saying it's good he has such a pill in reserve. Because of him, Lin Haoran was harmed. Lin Haoran looks back with a smile on his face, saying that's not true. Xiao, hearing all this, seems to have an idea and says he really was in need of that herb to help his health and asks Zhi to confirm. She immediately hugs Xiao, saying it's all true. Lately, Xiao has been very weak. The four, seeing this, are shocked. Lin Haoran gets a bit irritated with all this and wonders when Xiao became such a liar. Even though Lin Haoran needs to get this pill by any means to not be a loser. Lin Haoran goes back to his act and says that Xiao should take this plant and use it, because it wouldn't be right for someone as unworthy as Lin Haoran to continue with such a plant. Xiao, in the blink of an eye, takes the plant from Lin Haoran's hand and goes back to Zhi, saying everything is resolved and they would have chicken stew for dinner. Zhi doesn't understand anything that's happening. A system window notifies that Xiao gave Zhi a first-class plant blood dragon herb, and with that, he received 5 times more in a second-class blood dragon plant. Lin Haoran starts coughing and says he is happy if he can help his master. The two disciples of Meng Yu hold him. One of them says that Lin Haoran put his own cultivation at risk to help his master, even though Xiao didn't return the favor. They ask Meng Yu to defend Lin Haoran. Meng Yu says to Xiao that human lives are at stake, and as representatives of the sect, they could not just stand by watching this. Meng Yu emphasizes that if these news spread, the Seventh Peak would still be able to get disciples in the future. Xiao stops in front of everyone, saying there's no need to hurry. Then, Xiao approaches Lin Haoran, saying that since the two had a relationship of student and master, he could not stand there watching Lin Haoran die. Xiao emphasizes that he has a small concern because as Lin Haoran had many offenses in the Seventh Peak, Xiao fears that his body might not withstand the pressure of the pill. So, Xiao offers to cleanse his meridians. Meng Yu, seeing this, thinks that Xiao values talent highly. Meng Yu believes that Xiao indeed intends to pass on his skills to his students, and if he does this frequently, then there must be some technique Xiao uses to minimize the side effects. Therefore, Meng Yu should pay close attention to everything. Xiao touches Lin Haoran's neck, saying that he risked his life for Xiao, so Xiao could not just leave him in this state. Xiao holds Lin Haoran's hand, and energy begins to glow, leaving Lin Haoran a bit frightened by everything. After a few seconds, Lin Haoran starts to feel a lot of pain, and his mouth foams. Meng Yu's two disciples look at this and wonder how the cultivation of the disciples turned so tragic. Meng Yu tells them to pay more attention, as they were just treating the hardships that Master Lin Haoran went through. Lin Haoran realizes that Xiao wasn't passing his skills to him, but was instead taking his cultivation energy and destroying his meridians. Lin Haoran was trying to scream for help but couldn't speak, as Xiao, by touching his neck, used a technique that left him voiceless. Lin Haoran realized he was doomed if this continued. Meanwhile, Meng Yu finds everything natural, saying that Lin Haoran was doing a great job. After the process, Lin Haoran falls completely destroyed on the ground. Xiao says that he finished applying an extremely powerful technique to heal Lin Haoran's entire body. But because his cultivation was very low, he might not withstand it. Xiao asks Meng Yu to take Lin Haoran back and let him rest. Xiao leans on Zhi, saying that he is a bit tired because he used a lot of his own energy and needs to rest a bit. Meng Yu starts to laugh, thinking that he couldn't understand exactly the technique used by Xiao, but clearly, his aura is considerably lower. This means that it's a great time to try. Meng Yu jumps to attack Xiao. Zhi screams for him to be careful. but Xiao smiles, as he was prepared for this. Then, he quickly turns around and easily defends against the attack. Xiao, smiling, asks how Meng Yu had the courage to use such a situation to attack a weak individual like Xiao, who just helped a man on the brink of death. Meng Yu, seeing this, is shocked by the situation and wonders if this was really a favorable time and how Xiao has such strong energy. Xiao uses his energy and throws Meng Yu away. Meng Yu falls to the ground. His disciples run to help him. Xiao turns around as if nothing had happened and calls Jie to cook a chicken. She, as always, is excited, agrees, and begins to prepare with Xiao. Lin Haran wakes up and screams, asking what the two were waiting for to act. The two look at each other and prepare for battle. One of them takes some hidden items that Meng Yu had won during one of his travels. This can be controlled through a special technique. It disappears into the air without leaving any scent, a completely invisible attack. No one was able to counteract this before they came to the 7th peak. Meng Yu gave this to him and made clear how to use it if it came to this point. Then, he launches it towards Xiao. However, Xiao dodges as if it were nothing, making it seem like a joke. The item hits the door and starts to corrode. Xiao, looking at this, thinks that it really is something different. However, as soon as he consumed the limitless golden pill, his senses improved greatly, allowing Xiao to perfectly sense killing intent. Otherwise, Xiao could be in serious trouble. Now, Xiao looks at the two who didn't understand how Xiao had dodged the attack, but it didn't matter, as they were going to continue attacking. Xiao tells Ji to use the Kanglang sword technique, target southeast. Ji summons her sword and prepares for the attack. With a simple movement, she defends against the attack. Ji is astonished by what she did. A system window appears, saying that a reward was given. C. 0 stone. Detected that the disciple, under the guidance of the master, comprehended the intent of the Kanglang sword. First stage, reward tripled. Obtained the Dragon Spirit Armor, Earth category, intermediate class. Xiao looks at Ji and thinks he had expected this. Ji's innate body sword she learned recently, although she is already able to understand the sword intent. Meng Yu's two disciples are completely astonished by this, for even over the nascent soul realm, even the realm gathering separation would not be able to detect this attack. They ask who the hell Zai is. Lin Horan, crawling on the ground, screams that he needs to get out of there quickly. Zai notices this and, looking at Lin Horan, who had betrayed his master and harmed his ancestors, how Lin Horan had the courage to try to harm his master. Now, hearing this, Lin Horan gets scared. Zai jumps with her sword and says it's unforgivable. Lin Horan tries to flee, but Zai's attack hits him with great force. Lin Horan falls completely defeated on the ground, saying with his trembling voice that this could not be happening. One of the disciples tells him not to approach. Master Meng Yu says it will not end like this, for Xiao harmed their companion. The sect master will not let this pass. The other disciple says they should not fear Ji, for they are in the foundation stage and another in the golden core, and Ji was just in innate cultivation. However, the other disciple points behind Ji, saying they were not seeing what was really there. When they look, Xiao is with a bloodthirsty look. Xiao touches Ji's shoulder, but she tells Xiao not to worry and rest, for she would take care of everything for him. But Xiao says he wanted to teach Ji something, and, with the same look, says that sometimes dying is more convenient than living. The two start to stutter, asking what Xiao was thinking of doing, and ask him not to approach any further. Xiao, while walking directly towards them, asks if they are regretting their actions. Unfortunately, it's too late now. A few hours later, in front of the secti leader, Xiao reports the whole occurrence, saying that Meng Yu, along with a traitor from the sect, came to provoke without any reason. And to protect his and his disciples' integrity, Xiao and Ji killed Lin Haoran and crippled the cultivation of 2 disciples from the 3rd peak. With all this, Xiao hopes the sect leader understands and does not try to punish the 7th peak for it. Leader Zhang, he just looks at all this. Zhang He says that, although the traitor is dead, there may still be remnants. The leader emphasizes that repeatedly violating the sect rules cannot be forgotten. Several times, Xiao lowers his head and says the leader is correct, and he, Xiao, respectfully follows the sect leader's instructions. Meng Yu stands up and says the leader is being biased towards Xiao, for clearly he is distorting the real facts, talking nonsense. Meng Yu says he went to the 7th peak with good intentions, and Xiao killed one of his disciples, breaking the sect rules, and this should be punished with expulsion. Xiao responds that it was not quite a visit, as he had already taken Lin Haran as one of his disciples. Meng Yu should be responsible for Lin Haran's life and death. Xiao asks what the purpose was in taking him to the 7th peak. Xiao completes saying that visits do not need prior preparations and throws the needles used in the attack. Xiao asks Meng Yu if he thinks he can easily deceive the sect leader like this. Meng Yu, stuttering, tells Xiao not to make false claims like that. Leader Zhang. He slams his hand on his chair, showing he was annoyed with all this. He emphasizes that it really is unusual to see Meng Yu defending the sect rules like this. The leader says that since Meng Yu started all this, they should let Meng Yu set an example by voluntarily losing his cultivation according to the sect rules. Meng Yu, upon hearing this, kneels down again, begging for mercy. Zhang. He stands up and says, "That's enough. This matter would end here. As punishment for Meng Yu's behavior, he should undergo 3 months of physical penance and 1 month of reflection facing the cliff, and there will be no further discussion." Xiao thanks, saying the sect leader is very wise. The guards arrive to take Meng Yu, who is disbelieving to this point. While being taken away, Meng Yu looks at Xiao and says he would take revenge no matter the cost. While all this was happening, Ji was training seriously in the 7th Peak's training hall. Xiao opens the door and asks how Zi's comprehension was going, but as soon as he opens the door, she gets startled and quickly gets up, starting to run around Xiao, apologizing for having acted that way with the traitor. And if the sect leader had applied any punishment, she would take full responsibility. Xiao calms her down, saying that it was nonsense in her head. She wasn't at fault for anything, and she should be more at ease, for Xiao would protect her from everything and everyone. No one would be able to harm her. Xiao touches Ji on the shoulder and tells her to remember these words well. From today onwards, whether it's traitors, gods, Buddhas, emperors, or ministers, if anyone dares to offend Ji or Xiao, he himself would retaliate. All this leaves Ji with a face red from excitement. Xiao says that even if the sky falls, he will still be by Ji's side to protect her. Ji starts to cry and falls to her knees, showing gratitude. Seeing this, Xiao asks what she was doing. Xiao lifts Ji up and asks her to simply say if she wants to say something. Zi says there are some things she feels should not be hidden from Xiao. Zi says her real name is Lin Ji, and she is the daughter of the Lin family, the rulers of the Southwest. Xiao is surprised by this, as the Lin family was a recognized martial arts family in the Southwest. Xiao thinks that 10 years ago something happened and everyone was annihilated overnight. Ji, with her eyes full of tears, begins to explain that 10 years ago, the Lin family discovered a huge spiritual stone vein on their territory, and this was a great breakthrough. The abundance of spiritual stone resources was enough to establish a power similar to the Hongmeng sect overnight. Ji's father, who was the head of the Lin family at the time, immediately ordered that this matter should not be disclosed, fearing it would attract disaster. However, Ji's uncle, driven by selfish motives, sold this information to the Luoyun sect because he was dissatisfied with the distribution of mineral resources by Ji's father. Ji's uncle wanted to be the head of the family, and, since they didn't let him do such a thing, then he sold the information wishing that everyone would die to take advantage of the spiritual mine. The Luoyun sect murdered more than 100 members of Ji's family. The Lin family survived only under her father's protection. Ji was able to survive by a stroke of luck. When Zi managed to escape from all that, she encountered bandits on the way who robbed her of all her money and sold her to slavers. Zi says fortunately her master Xiao found her, otherwise Ji can't even imagine where she would be at this moment. Hearing this, Xiao burst into tears, saying he had no idea that his disciple's life was so miserable. Now it's clear why Ji hates traitors. Her seriousness is justified. Xiao grabs Ji by the arm, saying they would go down the mountain. Ji asks why they would do that and where they would go. Xiao says Ji begged Xiao to be her master, and out of respect for that, he should avenge everything. Xiao looks into Ji's eyes and smiles, saying that as her master, he would go with her to the Luoyun sect to avenge everyone with their own hands. Ji starts to cry again upon hearing this. Ji runs and hugs Xiao, saying she just wanted to see him live a peaceful life and, if necessary, she would spend the rest of her life kneeling just to fulfill that. Xiao tries to calm her down, saying she doesn't need to say those words at the moment. They must head for the peak. The future is limitless. Xiao calls Ji to leave, and she agrees. In the middle of the forest outside the city, two people were fighting when suddenly another person arrives there. These two people are Bai Luori and Linqing Xuan. As soon as Bai Luori sees the leader, he raises his sword enraged, saying he should have known who was behind this, for letting all these other people die one by one, consuming their energy. Only this guy is capable of doing such a thing, isn't that right, Zhang Yi? This man is named Zhang Yi. He is from the Sun and Moon Ghost sect. Zhang Yi smiles, saying it's no wonder Bai Luori was a disciple of Fairy Zhu, as Bai Luori was able to kill several men there. Zhang Yi highlights that the green twin swords technique certainly deserves its reputation. Zhang Yi leaps towards the two, declaring that it all ends there. Bai Luori and Linqing Xuan brace for battle, but suddenly, a beam of energy shoots between the three, causing everyone to halt. Zhang Yi turns angrily, questioning who did that. Linqing Xuan and Bai Luori, startled, gaze at the hole created in the stone. Ji appears, frustrated with energy in her hand, lamenting that she unfortunately missed her attack. Xiao, quite calmly, mentions he had warned that Ji's attack was timed too early, which is why she missed. Zhang Yi turns and comments that all this was caused by such a beauty, mockingly asking how she plans to compensate him. Ji dislikes Zhang Yi's tone and declares his arrogance warrants death. Ji advances on Zhang Yi, but with a simple move Zhang Yi disarms Ji, telling her that her master should have advised her against such actions if she's not strong enough. Linqing Xuan and Bai Luori, witnessing this, shout for Ji to be careful, concerned for her, but Ji is entirely focused on her task and tells Zhang Yi that the only thing her master taught her was not to pity fools like Zhang Yi. Then Ji uses her magic and a glow forms behind Zhang Yi, and before he can react, several swords strike him from behind, causing Zhang Yi to scream in pain. Ji takes Zhang Yi's Qiankun bag and brings it to Xiao, noting it contains nothing of great value, just some spiritual stones and elixirs. Xiao suggests she should just keep the bag. Linqing Xuan and Bai Luori approach Ji and Xiao, thanking them for their help. They introduce themselves as students of Elder Zhu Xuan from the Hongmeng sect and inquire about their names. Xiao introduces himself, pleased to meet them, as Elder Xiao of the 7th Peak, and introduces Ji as his student. Linqing Xuan and Bai Luori are surprised to meet Xiao and express their gratitude again. Xiao dismisses the formalities and inquires why they were in such a remote location, fighting against the Sun and Moon. Ghost Sect. Bai Luori explains that the Ghost Sect has always harbored resentment towards the Hongmeng sect. Some members even relish in killing monks, and the prior conflict was over this plant, the colorless grass of 1,000 years low grass. This plant comes in 5 quality levels: low, human, mystic, earthly, celestial, and immortal. Among them are 4 grades: inferior, medium, superior, and absolute. Bai Luori mentions that although this plant serves merely as a base for creating foundation stage pills, they are still highly valuable. He emphasizes the rarity of these plants. This one, for instance, was unexpectedly found at an auction due to leaked information. The leaked monetary information drew Zhang Yi's attention, leading to them being followed. Out of respect and gratitude, Bai Luori offers the plant to Xiao, stating that if he hadn't arrived in time, the plant would surely have been stolen by the Ghost Sect. Seeing this, Xiao remarks that Bai Luori would likely use this herb to refine foundation stage pills, significantly increasing the chance of success in the foundation stage. Xiao questions Bai Luori if he truly wishes to give it to him. Linqing Xuan and Bai Luori gaze intently at Xiao. Then Bai Luori responds that his master always taught them to be thankful for generosity and always avenge their enemies. With that, Bai Luori pleads for Xiao to accept the herb as a token of gratitude. Xiao agrees to accept, but since they are esteemed students of Elder Zhu, as soon as Xiao refines the pills, he will share them. Bai Luori thanks again and attempts to hand the herb to Xiao, but Xiao looks back and suggests it's a bit early to receive such a gift and calls for everyone's attention, as he intends to teach 3 lessons to all present. Xiao advises that in the future, when they kill someone, they should focus on eradicating the root of the problem and demonstrates by launching a sword with his magic at a tree, slicing it in half. 2 people appear beside the tree that was just cut down. Bai Luori, with a frightened face, yells asking when they hid there. The woman, still crouched, says that he was acting extremely arrogant even though he is at the 1st level of the Golden Core. These 2 are called Bai Yanzi, who is at the 3rd level of the Golden Core, and Qing Yang. She is at the 4th level of the Golden Core. Bai Yanzi says he doesn't know how Xiao had the courage to kill their disciple. Fortunately, they were nearby. So unfortunately, it's time for Xiao to die. Xiao says he heard about the 2 elders of the Lunar and Solar Phantom sect a while ago, known as the Yin and Yang deities. Their soul recovery abilities are unmatched, and capturing targets is just a matter of time. It must be you 2, right? Xiu thinks that before leaving the 7th peak, he used techniques to hide his aura. Clearly, these 2 don't have that much discernment. Bai Yanzi looks at Xiao and says that even knowing their reputation, he still does not show fear. This makes Bai Yanzi even more excited for the combat. Bai Yanzi swings his chains trying to hit Xiao, but he easily dodges the first attack. Xiao looks at the trunk of the tree that the chain touched and notices something different. Bai Yanzi creates a kind of whirlwind with his chains, leaving Xiao in the middle of them. Bai Yanzi says that these chains were fused with blood and qi of thousands of people. Even a nascent soul cultivator will be turned into bones if they touch them. Xiu continues to dodge all the chain attacks and thinks that Bai Yanzi's words are very extravagant. As long as he keeps dodging, everything will be fine. But just as Xiu finishes saying these words, he feels something strange and, looking down, sees several magical skeletons coming out of the ground and holding his feet. Qing Yang, with her staff in hand, says that this staff allows her to use the souls of thousands of people as a sacrifice. Once you enter, you will never come out. Xiao, seeing this, gives a little laugh and says they still manage to coordinate attacks together. Not bad. Qing Yang screams for him to die, as now Xiao was being grabbed by several souls and chains were everywhere surrounding him. Zhi and the other 2 were completely desperate seeing this. Xiao closes his eyes, and a second later several magical swords appear around him. Xiao launches them towards the 2. Bai Yanzi becomes a bit more relaxed, saying that Xiao is merely taking form at the spiritual energy stage, and yet still wants to face the 2 magical treasures at once. Qing Yang, as soon as she sees Xiao's attack, is a bit shocked, asking them to be calm. One of the swords, as soon as it hits the chains, pierces them with extreme ease, leaving Bai Yanzi completely desperate, as he did not expect this. The sword hits Bai Yanzi, throwing him back. Qing Yang, as soon as she sees this, is completely scared by the whole situation and thinks this is not normal. How does Xiao's sword have so much power? This is very bad. Qing Yang tries to flee. Zhi, seeing this, yells to Xiao that she is running away while Qing Yang ran desperately. She thinks those swords are not normal, because even a high-level sword being wielded by a nascent soul stage cultivator would not be so powerful. As soon as Zhi alerts him, Xiao focuses and asks if Qing Yang really thought she was going to run away. Xiao unleashes his power towards Qing Yang, stating that she should die. Qing Yang uses the souls within her staff again, asking them to block this attack. Xiao's sword continues to advance towards the center, heading towards Qing Yang. Once this formation is broken, all the spirits will be freed. As soon as the spirits hear this, they stop and refuse to protect Qing Yang, who becomes confused and tells the spirits that Xiao is the enemy, and therefore, they should protect Qing Yang. But the spirits turn against Qing Yang and start to bite and attack her. Thus the curse is broken, and Zhao frees them to go their own ways. Linking Xuan and Bai Luori are completely amazed by Zhao's immense strength, as the 2 villagers from the Lunar and Solar Ghost sect were just killed by Elder Zhao with just 2 moves. Linking Xuan thinks that now Xiao might even be in the nascent soul realm. Zhi comes running, all happy, saying that all the treasure from the 2 who were just defeated was there with her. Xiao approaches and smiles, congratulating Zhi and saying she is getting better and better at collecting spoils. Xiao tells Zhi that there is a Qiankun bag that belongs to Zhang Yi, so Zhi could keep it. As soon as Zhi hears this, her eyes light up with happiness. Ji, very happy with this, thanks her master Xiao for the gift. Linking Xuan and Bai Luori are agape, seeing that Xiao was giving all the economy of the elders from the lunar and solar ghost sect to Ji, who was just a disciple. Ji was now boasting with 10,000 low-rank spirit stones and many elixirs. Jai asks her master Xiao how she was going to use all this by herself. Xiao says that he had already given everything to Ji, so she should save and use it very carefully. Xiao thinks it's time to see what the system gave him as a reward. The system notifies that it was detected that the host gave to his apprentice 68,720 low-rank spirit stones, 4,600 intermediate-rank spirit stones, 36 second-stage cores, 16 third-stage flying locust condensed pills, merciless millennium herb, 100 cubic meters Kenkun ring, 250 cubic meters Kenkun bags. The system announces that it was calculating the rewards. After a few seconds, the system shows the rewards, which are a level 4 immortal nourishing pill, a 15,000 cubic meters Kenkun ring, 5 merciless millennium herbs, 2,000 absolute class spirit stones. Xiao is very surprised with all that he has just received. Xiao stops for a moment and smiles, as he had received 2,000 absolute class spirit stones. There are 4 classes of spiritual stones: low, intermediate, superior, and absolute. The exchange value between the higher levels is 1 to 100. This means that Xiao has 2 billion low-class spiritual stones. Xiao celebrates happily, as he just became rich overnight. She goes to Xiao and asks him if she could give these 2 bags to Linking Xuan and Bai Luori, since she already had a Qiankun ring. Bai Luori says they cannot accept it, as it is too valuable. Xiao pats Ji on the head and says that he had given it to her, so Ji could do whatever she wants with all the gifts. Ji smiles and hands the 2 bags to them, asking them to take good care of them. Linking Xuan and Bai Luori cry with happiness, saying that Ji and Xiao were good people. Bai Luori thinks that he is envious of Ji for having such a selfless master. After some time, Xiao and Ji arrive at the Luoyun city, alchemy room. After entering, there are several people inside focused. Ji asks Xiao what they were doing there. Xiao explains that the ruthless millennium herb they just obtained outside the city can be used to refine foundation creation pills for Ji. To avoid losing the efficacy of the medicine, they would refine the elixir first and then go to the Luoyun sect. Ji, hearing this, becomes extremely happy with her master. A woman hears the conversation. Her name is Su Muhan. As soon as she hears this conversation, she is surprised because one must be at least at the golden core cultivation level to refine foundation creation pills. Su Muhan, seeing Xiao, thinks he looks too young for such an achievement, but as she takes another look, she sees Xiao cultivating calmly, which impresses her. Suddenly everything explodes. Xiao and Ji are thrown away by the explosion. Ji, embarrassed, asks if Xiao really knows how to make elixirs. Xiao opens his fan and tries to cover his face while responding that he had never made a foundation creation pill before. Su Muhan comes over and says that if they wish to perfect a foundation creation pill, she could help them. Ji gets excited, saying that would be great, but Xiao was a bit suspicious of all this. Su Muhan says that the foundation creation pill requires pouring a large amount of spiritual energy into it, and Xiao would have to do this alone. The other people watching think Su Muhan is teaching for free. It seems she really has a good heart. Xiao, looking at Su Muhan's shirt, sees the symbol indicating she is a second-level alchemist. Xiao is surprised because she seems very young for this. While Su Muhan is focused on the herb in her hand, Xiao thanks her for the help and says he would pay double the market value for the assistance. And so, Su Muhan begins preparing the herb, while Ji and Xiao just watch everything happening. Green and yellow energy begin to spread around the place. Su Muhan takes a bottle and says, "Dan Sung," and the energy starts to enter the bottle. Xiao thanks her, and when he goes to pay, Su Muhan says there's no need, as it was just a favor she did for them. People start to run and scream, saying the auction has started, and there is a terrestrial-level sword in the auction. Su Muhan just watches, surprised by all this. Su Muhan starts to leave the place and says there's no need to pay. Xiao thinks he needs to buy a good weapon for Ji, and there is a terrestrial-level sword in the auction. Xiao thinks that if he can buy everything useful in the auction and give it to Ji, he would earn a fortune in rewards from the system. Then, Xiao calls Ji to follow him to the auction. Ji accepts and is happy, as she has not been to one before. On the second floor of the Tianji building, the auction is happening. In the center there is a person presenting the items. In their hands there is a 1,000-year-old ironwood whip, infused with spiritual energy, embedded with spiritual stones to multiply its power, capable of killing and being upgraded to the Zhuan lower realm. The starting price is 30,000 low-class stones. Z stands up, happy, and shouts, 100,000. The others are very annoyed, as they bid very high on all the items. Normal people can't keep up with all this money. Su Muhan, watching this, just stays silent. The presenter announces a superior class melted core fire lotus. The presenter says that after testing, the quality of this lotus is exceptional, and for this reason, the starting price is 1 million low-class spiritual stones. Su Muhan, all shy, thinks this is her only chance to get the melted core lotus, but Z, not caring about anything, stands up again, all happy, saying she offers 2 million. Su Muhan just fills her eyes with tears and is disbelieving. The other people say they can't cover that value, and it was over. It was expected that the rich would take it again. The presenter hits the gavel, saying it was sold to Xiao for 2 million. Xiao, with his money bag, starts to think, who was the crazy one who said money wouldn't bring happiness? Z just looks at Xiao. The presenter brings the lotus to Xiao's table, congratulating him on the acquisition. Z is impressed by the beauty of the lotus. Su Muhan, looking at them, wonders if they really will buy everything there. Su Muhan starts to feel a bit sad, because she really needed the melted core, and was thinking of asking Xiao to let her keep it. But Su Muhan was afraid of the response she might get from Xiao. However, she gathers courage and approaches Xiao's table, calling out to him. Z, upon seeing Su Muhan, becomes joyful and asks if she wasn't the alchemist from earlier. But Su Muhan does not respond and simply kneels in front of Xiao, saying her father was a martial artist, but had gone too far. And thus, she needs the help of the fire lotus. Then, Su Muhan begs Xiao to sell her the fire lotus, emphasizing that she would repay the favor by working hard for Xiao. Ji, moved by this, asks her master. Xiao says that now the lotus belongs to Ji, so she could do whatever she wants with it. As soon as Xiao says this, the system notifies that it was detected that the host gave his apprentice a superior grade core-fused fire lotus, and the reward is 5 times greater, a 5th class core-fused fire lotus. Z becomes overjoyed with this and says that if that's the case, then she would give it. But before anything can happen, a rope with an iron tip comes towards them. Ji quickly realizes and defends the attack. After this surprise attack, Ji asks who was doing this. The people there start to scream that a fight was about to begin. A man holding this rope calls Ji a little shit and points to another man, saying he is his master and would offer 3 million to buy the lotus. The people are shocked, as 3 million is a large amount for an ordinary person. This man is Wang Ronger. He is the son of the lord of Luoyun City. Wang Ronger mockingly says that 3 million would be nothing for Su Muhan. As soon as Su Muhan sees him, she looks a bit scared, and Xiao notices this. The people start to comment that Wang Ronger began to harass Su Muhan again. They highlight that since Su Muhan inherited the position of family head, Wang Ronger has been harassing her relentlessly. The subordinate who had attacked stands up again and yells that these 2 bitches should stand up and offer the lotus with both hands, as Wang Ronger wanted it. Ji puts a hand on her hip and says they would not sell, just because Wang Ronger wanted it. Su Muhan runs over and asks Ji not to be so impulsive, and pleads with Ji not to offend those people. This leaves Ji and Xiao a bit confused. Xiao says it seems like Su Muhan has some connection with that man. Su Muhan starts to explain, saying that man is the son of the lord of Luoyun City, and could be considered the supreme lord there. Su Muhan says that once Wang Ronger came to her door asking for her hand in marriage, but Su Muhan did not accept. After that, Wang Ronger began to follow her everywhere, non-stop, day after day. Su Muhan apologizes and says all this trouble was caused because of her. Then she offers 50,000 spirit stones as an apology and says she is leaving. Xiao, seeing all this, thinks Su Muhan does not despair over anything, even needing medicine for her father. She did not despair when things did not go her way, not to mention she is a 2nd-level alchemist at such a young age. Xiao becomes quite excited about this situation and thinks it really would be worth teaching a woman like this. Xiao calls Sumuhan and tells her to wait a bit, as he would give her the lotus and give Wang Rongger a beating. But there was one condition. This leaves Sumuhan completely surprised. Sumuhan turns around running and asks what that condition would be. Xiao opens his fan again and says she just needed to worship him as her master. Sumuhan screams, saying she accepts. As long as Xiao saves her father, she would do anything. Sumuhan kneels and calls Xiao master. She asks him to accept this small token of respect. Xiao accepts and says that from today, she would be his second disciple, and asks her to stand up. The system window opens again and informs, "Congratulations to the host for accepting a new disciple. It was detected that the disciple has the human-level alchemy heart. The success rate of alchemy increases by 30%. The return reward was doubled, and the host obtained the alchemy heart, terrestrial level. The success rate of alchemy is increased by 70%. The information of the disciple Sumuhan was scanned and is being opened in the information panel. Name, Sumuhan. Identity, true second disciple. Understanding 60. Aptitude, 50. Talent, human-level alchemy heart, upgradable. Requirement, elixir improvement." Xiao, seeing all this, is a bit surprised. He just laments the fact that Sumuhan's aptitude and understanding are somewhat average. Thus, it seems she has to follow the path of infusing and transmitting the power of the alchemy heart. She raises her sword and says that in that case, she would be there to help. Xiao tells Ji to kill everyone there for him. Ji, without hesitation, agrees and attacks everyone there. The man who had attacked before thinks Ji is just a show-off and prepares to attack again. But Ji lands a kick on the man's face that even knocks out one of his teeth, throwing him hard against the wall behind. Wang Rongger, seeing this, widens his eyes and is shocked. Ji says she's had enough of this type of person who thinks too highly of themselves and has no power at all. Wang Rongger, trembling with fear and with a quivering voice, points to Ji asking how she dares to hit his people and asks if Ji knows who his father is. Ji charges at Wang Rongger, saying it doesn't matter who his father is. She would beat him up just the same, until his father can no longer recognize him. Wang Rongger starts crying and tells Ji to leave and yells that if something happens to him, his father would not let her go unpunished. But suddenly, someone appears between the two and stops Ji's attack. She's a bit surprised, as she hadn't noticed this man was there. Xiao just watches all this. This man is called Nameless. He is Wang Rongger's bodyguard who is currently at the nascent soul level. Wang Rongger begins to smirk and mockingly says, "They were not brave, so why don't they continue like this?" Wang Rongger orders his bodyguard to beat up Ji and Xiao. Everyone was involved in this, so no one could escape. Ji just watches all this while Wang Rongger hides, like a chicken, behind his bodyguard. But his bodyguard said that the orders given to him were that he should ensure Wang Rongger's safety, but he would not interfere in his personal fights with other people. The auction presenter bangs the gavel and yells, asking what was happening there. The auction presenter says that anyone who fights inside, according to the rules, can be executed. Immediately he asks them to leave there because people who do not follow the rules of the Tianji house are not welcome there. Wang Rongger starts to withdraw, saying it would be easier for everyone this way. Before leaving, Wang Rongger tells Xiao and everyone there that it's better they control themselves in the city of Luoyun and not let him see them again. Ji was very angry, wanting to break everything, but Xiao just told her to control herself and called her to withdraw. Ji was still angry, saying that Wang Rongger was very conceited. She was not happy about it. Xiao just told her not to be so mean. The man from before asks Wang Rongger if they were really going to let them go, just like that, but Wang Rongger said it wasn't so easy to escape from him. As soon as they left there, they would catch them, as this would not break the rules of the Tianji building. Wang Rongger says they would execute Xiao and put his body at the city entrance, and with the girls, it would be a bit different. Already outside, one of Wang Rongger's subordinates was looking for Xiao but couldn't see them anywhere. Xiao was behind one of the walls and concentrates his magic and sends one of his swords to attack the three. The bodyguard sees the sword coming in time, then grabs his sword and tries to defend the attack. But Xiao's attack easily breaks the bodyguard's sword and goes directly to Wang Rongger, hitting him and throwing him to the ground. Xiao appears in front of the three. The subordinate from before yells at Xiao, asking how he dared to kill someone on the lands of the Tianji house. Xiao, very calmly, tells them not to be so foolish, as Xiao had waited for them to leave the Tianji house to kill him. Thus, he hadn't broken any of the rules there. This leaves the subordinate without answers. The bodyguard drops the rest of his sword on the ground and says that Wang Ronger was authoritarian, idiotic, and annoying, but the bodyguard was paid to protect him, and so he should be loyal to Wang Ronger. This means that if someone kills the person he was protecting, he should take the head of the perpetrator. Otherwise, the Wang family would hunt him to the ends of the earth. Then, the bodyguard prepares to fight. Xiao just offers a small smile on his face. Xiao begins to float, surrounded by his swords, and says that the bodyguard's sword is completely destroyed, and yet he wants to fight him. The bodyguard starts to grow scales on his body, saying he has beast blood, so his body is harder than a simple sword. Using a sword for him means nothing. It's just a matter of coexistence. Xiao, still very calm, looking at that, asks if he really thinks so. Xiao says he would love to test the strength of that, and launches his swords towards the bodyguard. The bodyguard catches the swords with his hand and breaks them in the middle, saying that was useless. Xiao remains calm and smiling, and asks if really not one of the 7 swords would be useful. A sword appears behind the bodyguard, leaving him surprised. He tries to catch the sword with his hand. Energy begins to fly everywhere while the bodyguard holds it and screams. Xiao calls his sword back and says that even though he caught the sword, his hand seemed quite injured. Xiao asks how he plans to defend the next sword and attacks again. The bodyguard says that indeed Xiao's technique is without a doubt impressive, but his beast blood allows him to heal quickly. Thus, his hand begins to heal and change shape, which leaves Xiao a bit apprehensive. The bodyguard manages to catch the sword again with his hand. As he holds it, he looks at Xiao and says that just the swords wouldn't be enough to kill him. But the bodyguard thinks that the power of Xiao's sword is really out of the ordinary, because, just by holding a sword, the bodyguard almost exhausted all his strength. If Xiao launches one more of those swords, the bodyguard would be in trouble. The bodyguard looks at Xiao and says that apparently Xiao was already at his limit of strength. Xiao, looking at that, thinks what the bodyguard said is really true. The ordinary magic swords don't have much effect on him. However, this melted core fire lotus that Xiao had obtained from the system is cultivated by absorbing the purest fire element from the world, and is perfect for refining weapons. Xiao takes this moment to refine his equipment, and thus, a huge golden sword appears in front of him. Xiao says that this sword is extraordinarily dominant. Just by looking at it, Xiao is extremely happy. Xiao picks up the sword in his hand, very happy, and names it Happiness Fire. Xiao returns to the battle and launches his sword, telling the bodyguard to have a lot of fun with his arrogant friend. The bodyguard tries to defend with his arm, and as soon as the sword hits, he feels enormous pain. His arm is all cut up and smoke coming out of his body. The bodyguard, confused, wonders what kind of fire element that is and thinks this is not good. The bodyguard starts to concentrate and creates an energy barrier around himself while Xiu's swords were on their way, surrounding him. The bodyguard thinks that this shield he created won't last long. Looking at Xiu, the bodyguard thinks he definitely won't be able to face Xiu. If it continues like this, he would surely die. Xiao, seeing the bodyguard in trouble, says he still hadn't finished. Then, the sword that was in the bodyguard's hand starts to tremble and releases from the bodyguard's hand, breaking the barrier from inside out with extreme ease. Suddenly, all the swords are upon the bodyguard, and he can do nothing more. The bodyguard accepts defeat, lowers his head, and tells Xiao that he would accept anything. Xiao could kill him or damage his cultivation if he wished. Xiao just smiles and calls all his swords back to himself. The bodyguard, seeing this, does not understand why Xiao was sparing his life. Xiao says that if the bodyguard feels comfortable admitting defeat, then he would spare his life. Xiao thinks the bodyguard is a bit arrogant, but is a truly strong man with a strong determination. Xiao turns and begins to walk away, saying his name is Xiao, and that if one day the bodyguard wants to seek revenge, it would be a pleasure to fight him again. Xiao turns and says, however, that once a bodyguard fails in his mission, someone would come to collect that debt. Thus, the bodyguard should try to survive. This leaves the bodyguard completely scared. Xiao joins Ji and Su Muhan and says they would now go after Su Muhan's father to help him. Su Muhan thanks him, and Ji is all happy, saying how amazing Xiao is. The bodyguard watching the three leave thinks that Xiao is so young and has so many achievements, which is really something extraordinary to see. The bodyguard begins to retreat and thinks that if he survives the Wang family's hunt, he definitely wants to meet Xiao again. After some time, they arrive at the mansion. Su Ji, seeing this huge house, says that Su Muhan seems to come from a very wealthy family. Ji says that in her father's time, the Su mansion was indeed prosperous. But since Su Muhan took over as the family representative, the Su mansion has been declining day by day. Now it is far from what it used to be. Su Muhan says Xiao should not have killed Wang Rong'er because his father, Wang Cheng, besides being the city lord, is also an elder of the Luo Yun sect. Su Muhan says that in the past, Wang Cheng followed the current sect leader in several dangerous situations, thus, they have a very close relationship. By provoking him, probably in the future, Xiao would have trouble. Ji gets angry and says that if Wang Cheng were to come after them, she herself would make sure Wang Cheng would not return, as the Luo Yun sect was her main goal from the start. Su Muhan is happy and opens the door for them to enter. As soon as they open the door, they see a man sitting there. This man is named Su Hongyuan. He is Su Muhan's second uncle. As soon as she opens the door, he shouts her name and punches the chair. Her uncle calls her unworthy and asks how she dares to return there, leaving Su Muhan a bit surprised. Su Muhan asks why her uncle was there, and all the clan elders were also present. Ji is already a bit apprehensive about all this. Xiao is already on alert, as he noticed these guys were not friendly. A woman points her finger at Su Muhan, and begins to say that Su Muhan should not even dare to ask that, because if they had not come there, they would never know that the Su family had been sold by Su Muhan herself. This woman is Su Muhan's third aunt, named Su Runyue. She asks Su Muhan how she dared to take advantage of her older brother's great injury to take advantage of the Su family's property in the Celestial Destiny Pavilion. Su Muhan says it's not like that. She did not do this for any profit, but rather to buy the lotus and save her father's life. Her aunt asks where this lotus she claims to have bought is. Su Muhan takes the lotus out of her bag and shows it, saying she was completely happy to have gotten this lotus. Her uncle stands up and tries to forcefully take the lotus from Su Muhan. He is currently at the 6th level of the Golden Core. In terms of strength, Su Muhan turns around, scared, shouting for her uncle to stop, but before Su Muhan could see, Xiao steps in front of her with all his swords pointed at them and says he wanted to see who there would dare to touch a hair on Su Muhan. As soon as Su Hongyuan sees all of Xiao's power, he thinks it is something out of the ordinary, and clearly the power difference between them was glaring. Su Hongyuan realizes he couldn't even touch someone like Xiao, so he tries to flee from there at all costs. But suddenly, a sword hits the wall right in front of him, making him stop, and as soon as he notices, his entire body had been surrounded by swords on the wall. Runyue, seeing this, becomes worried and shouts, asking if Hongyuan was okay, but he just tells her to be very careful with those swords. Runyue turns and yells at Muhan, asking what this means, why Muhan was seeking foreigners to fight against their own family. Muhan starts to say something, but Zi grabs her arm and says she should not answer. Then, Xiao positions himself in front of the two. Runyue points her finger at Xiao and asks why he is acting like this and challenges him to try to hit her. Within seconds, one of Xiao's swords strikes right in front of Runyue, making her fall down scared, as she didn't even see the attack coming. Xiao points all his swords at them and says that anyone who dares to take another step, he would kill without hesitation. The other people there start to smile and say that even if Runyue and Hongyuan were wrong in being rude, they were still a family, connected by blood, so it's not right to let someone from outside treat them this way. Muhan starts to speak, but is interrupted by Runyue, who points her finger again at Muhan, calling her ungrateful, as the Su family had raised her for 20 years, and this is how she was repaying them. Muhan starts to cry and asks how they dared to accuse her like that. Muhan begins to scream that as soon as her father went mad, none of them had asked if she was okay. Not even once. The only thing they did was fight among themselves and take advantage of her father's forgetfulness to steal and divide his assets. Everyone listens in silence. Muhan screams again, saying that clearly everyone there was wishing her father's death. Ji hugs Muhan, who is breaking down in tears, and says that these relatives are a bunch of garbage, worse than animals, even worse than beasts, who care not for their own family but for money and power. Xiao touches Muhan's shoulder, saying that she was already his disciple, and that today she would have her first lesson from her master. Xiao points all his swords at everyone there, who were trembling with fear. Xiao emphasizes that when you are talking to people who hurt you and only use you, you must stand up for yourself and speak out strongly what you think. Xiao looks at Muhan and asks what she wants to do with them now. Suppress all, or eliminate them? Muhan just looks at her master, saying nothing. Meanwhile, Muhan's relatives fall into despair, asking what suppression and elimination meant. Muhan, with tears in her eyes, screams that she wishes her master to suppress the entire Su family, taking away their cultivation, but still leave them alive. Xiao says that if this is her wish, then it shall be done. Xiao tells Muhan to take care of her father and leave the rest to him. Muhan kneels down and thanks her master again. Ji bends down and tells Muhan to quickly take care of her father, as the two leave. Muhan looks at Xiao with gratitude and admiration. Then, Xiao closes his fan and asks who among them would like to be the first. Xiao says he would start with Hongyuan, then sends one of his swords towards him, who starts screaming desperately. Everyone else turns around and covers their eyes to not see the scene. Xiao starts spinning his fan, and in the background is Hongyuan lying down, covered in blood. Xiao asks who he will choose now. The rest of the Su family becomes desperate and starts running and screaming. Xiao prepares his swords and watches this for a while. Soon after, he launches his swords, saying that no one would escape from him. Within seconds, the swords hit everyone at the same time. Muhan's eyes shine as she says that no one had helped her like this, without asking for something in return. Muhan turns back and runs along with Ji, saying she needs to work harder to really save her father. A few minutes later, Muhan was already inside her father's room, Ji-wan. She kneels beside her father, who was lying in bed. Muhan looks at her father and is very anxious about the situation he was in. Suddenly, Xiao and Ji enter the room. Ji says that the entire Su family had already lost their cultivation and were locked in the dungeon. Muhan turns and says she is very grateful for the help her master gave her. Zi runs and asks Muhan how her father was. Muhan answers with a very sad expression that even after he took the lotus, he had not yet awakened. Xiao just watched all this and, realizing the pain of his new disciple, asks them to let him take a look at him. Muhan looks at Xiao, then agrees and steps aside. Xiao touches Ji-wan's wrist and uses some of his mana. Xiao starts to say that, from the pulse, it does not seem that Ji-wan has gone mad. In fact, he suffered an assassination attempt by someone, causing all his veins to burst. Xiao emphasizes that thanks to the medicinal elixirs he has been taking, he does not feel pain. Xiao fears that, this time, he may not be able to hold his breath. Muhan starts to panic and asks how this could have happened, but Xiao tries to calm her down, saying that it's okay, as Ji-wan was stable at the moment. Xiao prepares and begins to release intense mana and says that all he would need to do was rebuild Ji-wan's veins. Xiao says that, due to his training in the 10,000-kilometer sword control technique, his subtle control of spiritual power improved to a superior level. Then he smiles and starts to move his hand quickly, making his mana reach Ji-wan's body. While Xiao was doing this, he says that even the delicate work of repairing tendons and veins was no longer a problem for him. After that, Ji-wan starts to cough. Muhan is happy and shouts her father's name. Ji, concerned, asks if Ji-wan had woken up well. Finally, Ji-wan opens his eyes and calls for his daughter's name. Muhan is completely shocked that her father finally had risen. She asks how he was. Ji-wan answers that he was fine, just a little dizzy, but suddenly remembers something that worries him. Then he asks Muhan where Hongyuan was and if he had done something to her. Muhan says that she was fine and nothing had happened to her. However, Muhan becomes a bit curious and asks her father why he had mentioned the name of Hongyuan. Then, Ji-wan begins to explain that in recent years, he dedicated himself to improving the formula of the restorative elixir and finally had made some breakthroughs. But a few days before the incident, Ji-wan realized that he would need more cultivation to continue with the improvements, so he asked for the help of Hongyuan. But, while Ji-wan was distracted, Hongyuan tried to assassinate him from behind with a surprise attack. Ji-wan emphasizes that he never treated Hongyuan badly, neither in the past nor in the present, yet he hates him deeply. Ji-wan believes that this hatred comes from the fact that their father had chosen Ji-wan as the head of the family. Muhan lowers her head and listens attentively to every word of her father. After he finishes talking, Muhan slams the bed with hatred and says that it really was her uncle Hongyuan. Meanwhile, Xiao thought that the restorative elixir that Ji-wan had previously mentioned would probably be a third-level elixir, so it would be a good way to improve Muhan's alchemy heart. Xiao asks if Jiwan could give the recipe he had mentioned before. Jiwan turns to Xiao and asks who he was. Muhan stands up and introduces Xiao, saying that he is Elder Xiao from the Hongmeng sect and her new master. Muhan emphasizes that it was thanks to Xiao that she was able to wake him up. Jiwan and Xiao shake hands. Jiwan thanks Xiao for saving both Muhan and himself. Jiwan says he is very happy to know that his daughter is having such an opportunity. Jiwan stands up and taps on a wall twice, and a drawer comes out with the recipe inside. Muhan is impressed and asks when her father had installed this in his room. Jiwan smiles and says that it is quite old, as he used to use it to keep loans. Jiwan turns to Xiao and says that this is the recipe of his life and his family, but since Xiao had saved him and Muhan, then Xiao could have it if he wants. Xiao accepts the formula and upon reading, asks if Jiwan really had not been able to finish it. Jiwan lowers his head and says that unfortunately, no, he was very close to achieving it. But the wretch of his brother Hongyuan interrupted him. Xiao says it doesn't matter, because there is no serious problem with the formula, as they only needed to add a bit of yellow field herb. At that moment, it clicks in Muhan's head. She thinks that's really what was missing, the yellow field herb. How had she not thought of this before? The system opens and informs that, under the host's guidance, the disciple successfully understood the improved formula of the second level. Advanced recovery pill, and her talent, alchemy heart, was elevated to the mysterious level. After elevating the reward tenfold, the host's talent, alchemy heart, was elevated to the celestial level. At the celestial level, the success rate of the pills was increased by 99%, and the formula's compression increased by 30%. Xiao looks at this and thinks that the formula's compression index was increased by 30%, and that is the reason why Xiao started to have new ideas about many of the formulas he had obtained in the past. Jiwan takes Muhan's hand and says he can't even imagine what she went through having to take on everything alone for so long. Muhan says that it was what she was supposed to do, but unfortunately, she was not a good daughter to earn money. So, to maintain her father's medicine, she had to mortgage the family pharmacy, and thanks to this, it's possible that the Su family may not survive. Suddenly, Xiao says he has an idea, and this catches the attention of Muhan and Jiwan. Xiao throws a bag of money to them, saying that he could also recover the entire elixir store. Xiao says his plan is to recruit some alchemy apprentices, and that they would sign a lifelong contract with all of them so they would make pills and elixirs. However, there would be a condition that they do not reveal the formula. Jiwan, Muhan, and Ji just look at Xiao completely lost. Xiao continues to explain that if the apprentice refuses, then they would sign a non-competition agreement, and with that, they could not make the formula Xiao gave to them. Otherwise, Xiao would have to adopt a mean doctor stance and settle it another way. Xiao looks with a cold gaze and thinks that soon everyone would know how powerful they were. Xiao turns and says they can't waste more time. Then, he asks Muhan to make some pills and elixirs. Meanwhile, he and Zi would take care of Hongyuan. Zi smiles and says goodbye to Muhan. Jiwan, seeing this, asks his daughter if her master is a respectable person. Muhan replies that yes, he is. In the dungeon, Hongyuan was chained and trembling with fear, asking what they were going to do. Xiao just smiles and tells Ji to hurry up, as if she can't control the key of her sword. They won't get out of there. Zi concentrates a lot, and swords start to form one by one, until she reaches 10,000 swords. This is called Wanli sword. Around Zi there were many swords, all pointed at Hongyuan, who was lying on the ground, trembling with fear of all this. Zi was all sweaty, as she had a hard time doing all this, but Xiao does not let her rest and says that she did very well. But the next step is to convert all this into just one sword. He smiles and says that he believes in Ji. This leaves Ji quite excited. She starts to concentrate and says that she also believes she could do this. A ball of mana forms at the tip of her finger, and suddenly, a giant sword appears right above her hand. Zi turns to Xiao, smiling, and says that she finally did it. Xiao smiles back and says that just with that, they were already enough to deal with the Luo Yun sect. While they were talking, Hongyuan was dying of fear, leaning against the wall, looking at all this. Hongyuan starts to scream as the great sword was about to hit him. Hongyuan begs them to stop, shouting no. Xiao, sitting in a chair, asks Hongyuan if he had thought the same way when he tried to kill Jiwan. Did he ever think this day would come? Xiao looks at Ji and asks her to finish. Then Ji attacks, but Hongyuan manages to dodge. Xiao asks for the assassin to help as this won't do. Ji gets angry, saying she missed by a little, but Xiao tells her that she just needs to aim and shoot again. She doesn't need to rush as they had plenty of time. Then Z tries again and misses once more, and continues missing for a few other times. Half an hour later, with various marks on the wall, Hong Yuan's body was lying in a pool of blood. The system opens and informs that it has been detected that the disciple has understood the Wanli sword control technique. The host will be rewarded with 10 times the amount of the Wanli sword control technique, in addition to the flexible fingers sword, an object of the highest quality of ground level. Xiao gets up and thinks that now he has 2 flexible swords, and if he adds the transformation of all into one, even if someone manages to hit him when he is distracted, it will not cause him problems. Xiao thinks that this is much easier than cultivating himself. He calls Ji to see if Muhan was in need of any help. Z agrees with him. Meanwhile, at the mansion of the city lord Luo Yun, everything was very quiet on the outside. On the inside, in the hall, there were 3 people kneeling, and a body covered with a white cloth. These people were telling their lord that young Master Wang Ronger had been murdered. As soon as the lord hears this, he clenches his hand very tightly and screams, calling everyone damn trash, as they were paid to protect him. This man is the city lord of Luo Yun, father of Wang Ronger. He says that since his son Wang Ronger was killed, they should bring the head of the culprit. Otherwise, they would not leave alive. This leaves them paralyzed with fear, but one of them takes courage and says that the one responsible for the death of Wang Ronger was Xiao, an elder of the Hongmeng sect. Even Wu Ming was defeated by Xiao with just a few moves. It is impossible for them to do anything. This makes the lord even more nervous, calling them losers. Currently, the city lord is on the 7th level of the golden core. A dense and strong energy starts to spread throughout the room, and this throws the 3 men backwards. They scream for the lord to forgive them, as there was nothing they could do. The lord begins to think that he himself had verified the strength of Wu Ming, the personal bodyguard of his son. He thinks that if it is really true that this man named Xiao defeated Wu Ming with just a few moves easily, then definitely, the strength of this man is not something that the lord could compete with. The lord begins to walk and kicks one of the men who were there, telling them to get out of there. He thinks that the only way to avenge his son, Wang Ronger, is to ask for help from the Luo Yun sect. He starts to leave and says he would go to the Luo Yun sect and asks the men there to send invitations to all the nobles of the city, even to the Su family. The lord is completely irritated, saying he would avenge his son's death. Then, he promises that he would cut Xiao into pieces. Meanwhile, at the house of the Su family, the invitation arrives, saying that the Su family is cordially invited to a banquet at the Wang family's house this evening to rectify the situation of the family. Xiao, Muhan, and Ji were at the table. Ji says that this invitation is not a good thing. It is clearly a banquet to meet with the Hongmeng sect. Ji stands up and says they needed to leave the city right now and head directly to the Luo Yun sect. As soon as they leave the city of Luo Yun, they would find out what the Wang family would do. Xiao thinks a bit and replies no, because how could he refuse an invitation? Clearly, he would go. Ji waves his arms asking why. Xiao touches Ji's shoulder and says he heard that Yun Cheng would be at the banquet. Xiao asks his beautiful disciple if she really wanted to take revenge. As soon as Ji hears that name, she becomes angry. She sits down, irritated, and asks if that traitor would really be at the banquet. Muhan is shocked, as he has never seen Ji like this before. Xiao opens his fan and looks right into Ji's face, and says that now Yun Cheng trusts in the power of the Luo Yun sect, and that it is unparalleled. Previously, it would not have been so easy to catch him. Xiao stands up and asks what Ji thinks of joining him, and causing a little chaos at this banquet. Ji, completely nervous, tells her master that she will do whatever he asks. Muhan, seeing this, thinks that someone is going to get hurt there. Xiao, out of nowhere, turns to Muhan and asks how the matter of the pill and elixir factory is going. Muhan is startled, but says it is going very well. They have already recovered the old 17 pill factories of the Su family and are recruiting alchemy apprentices. And this afternoon, they put the recovery pill on sale. Muhan, all happy, says they sold 50 bottles and earned 5,000 lower-grade spirit stones. Xiao thinks for a moment and feels that 50 bottles are too few. He asks Muhan if she has analyzed the reasons for this. She says yes, then she raises her little finger and, all confident, says that the main purpose of the Huishan pill is to clear the mind and regulate internal energy. The uses are relatively limited. Besides all this, it is the first day of test sales. Xiao puts his hand inside his clothing and takes out some recipes he had made recently. Xiao says that, since that is the case, then she should keep these 3rd-level improved elixir recipes. She should study all of them and, When the time comes, she should pass the test sales report to him. Muhan, seeing all these third-level recipes, is completely enchanted. Her eyes even sparkle with happiness. Muhan takes the recipes in her hand and begins to read, and starts to laugh to herself, saying that this is an improved golden core pill. The healing effect is at least 10 times more effective than the traditional one, and is enough to protect the life of the user. She believes this would sell very well. While Muhan was hugging the recipes her master had given her, Xiao was thinking that he loved money and money loved him. Money is everywhere, comes all the time. Money comes from all parts. He also says that the happy life he always dreamed of lying down and collecting money, is one step away from being achieved. Night falls and guests are arriving at the city lord's mansion. Ji Yuan arrives at the entrance, and the city lord goes to greet him personally. Right behind him is Xiao. The city lord greets him. The city lord says he was worried when he heard that Ji Yuan was sick. The lord says that unexpectedly, after Ji Yuan recovered from the illness, the Su family's business reached a higher level. Right behind the lord there was a man with red hair, smiling suspiciously. Ji Yuan smiles and thanks Lord Chung for his concern. Xiao just looks at everything without saying anything. Chung goes to Xiao and says that he must be the man from the rumors who helped the Su family to recover, the man who took Muhan as a disciple, helping her to reach level 3 alchemy. Xiao thanks, saying that Lord Cheng is very kind. As soon as the red-haired man sees Xiao, he wonders why he was there, but then he realizes and imagines that this is a plan, as the city lord personally invited the Golden Core elders from the Luo Yun sect to help. Now, everyone is in guest clothes and waiting for him in the banquet hall, just an order from Master Wang for them to act and kill Xiao. But suddenly, he sees a girl with Xiao, and thinks she looks very much like the girl from that time. But he thinks it is impossible to be the same, since he himself had seen Lin Gu's men throw Ji off the cliff. Chung calls them to enter, as the banquet was about to start. Chung says he heard that Xiao had already conquered the 5th level of the Golden Core at such a young age. Chung stands up and says that, in addition, Xiao has 2 promising disciples in his hand, and a great future ahead of Xiao. The red-haired man agrees and says that the Su family is very lucky to have a person like Xiao being Miss Muhan's master. People around think Xiao really is a very talented person. But Xiao starts to laugh a lot and says he feels honored. At this point, Xiao was a little drunk. He turns another glass and says that in fact, there is a misunderstanding about his strength. Because in fact he was only at the 3rd level of the Golden Core, and the only reason it seems like he is at the 5th level of the Golden Core is... Z tries to stop him, but he shows one of his swords, saying that everything is thanks to this sword because he got it, and coincidentally, it is very powerful. He smiles again and says that if it weren't for this sword, he wouldn't dare to come down from the mountain. Muhan just looks at it, while Ji asks him to stop and not expose his treasure like that. What does he think he's doing? Chung says it's very kind of Xiao and asks his men to bring the gift, but in reality, Chung thinks he would have to go through a lot of trouble to check who Xiao really was. But apparently, he's just a fool. A chest is carried to the place, catching Xiao's attention, who wonders what it could be. Chung says that he has long admired young Master Xiao, and today he had prepared a particularly generous gift, hoping to become friends with Xiao. As soon as it is opened, there are several spirit stones inside. As soon as Xiao sees all these stones, he runs off with his eyes shining, saying there were so many. Ji tries to stop him, but there's no time. Xiao starts to throw them in the air, hug them, and do everything with the stones, saying they should have bought some things for the sect and other things for themselves, but they ended up spending tens of millions of stones at once. Xiao points out that he was worried about what he would say to the sect when he returned. Then, he thanks Mr. Chung once more, but Chung says that in fact, it is an honor for him to be able to help Mr. Xiao. Chung thinks Xiao was from some secret family with immense wealth, but apparently he's just a sect's errand dog. Chung stands up and says that he heard from all over that Xiao was a great master. Then Chung proposes a fight, his disciple against one of his, just for them to have a little fun. Chung stretches out his hand and asks what Xiao thinks of this, and if he would accept the challenge. Xiao, sitting next to the chest, happy as can be, says there's no problem at all. Then, he asks Ji to fight. Z, clearly annoyed, but respects her master and says she would fight. Chung says that Xiao is indeed quick. Then he applauds Xiao's choice. Chung says he wants to play a bit more, so he will raise the stakes. If Xiao wins, he would give 10 million more low-ranking stones and asks if Xiao would accept. Xiao, seeing this, is very tempted to accept, but he turns to Chung and asks if he should make a bet of equal value, because he didn't have a penny left. But Xiao had a great idea, so he calls his sword and says he would bet it. Chung says there would be no problem at all. Chung uses magic and creates a shield around the treasures of the bet. He says that, as it is a bet, no one should touch the objects until they know the results. Xiao says there's no problem with that. Then he hugs Muhan and tells Ji that everything is in her hands now, so she could not disgrace her master. Muhan asks Ji to be very careful. Ji says she's ready and asks them not to worry. Chung says Xiao He should fight first. He thinks Ji is just a fool, but he will play a bit with her to see what she could do. Then he takes his sword and says he's ready. The two face off and the contest begins. Ji starts attacking with her swords. Xiao He slams his sword on the ground to block the attack, but Ji's attack easily breaks Xiao He's sword, leaving him impressed and frightened. Ji stops her attack with 3 swords very close to Xiao He's throat. Then he sighs and admits defeat, and apologizes to his master. Xiao dies of laughter, saying they couldn't even receive a simple attack from his disciple. They are too weak. The others there don't like much what Xiao says and think it's very rude, but they try to overlook it, as Xiao was just a drunk. The man with red hair, who is Yuncheng, looks at this and doesn't like what he sees, thinking he would give just a bit more time to this spoiled brat, because they would see later. Chung says there are no problems. As in a competition there are winners and losers. Chung believes that the guards really said that the master and the disciple were good at sword fighting, but today they are nothing more than that. Xiao runs to the winnings of the bet and starts hugging them, saying that Master Chung really is a man of his word. A great man, because now they were rich. Xiao gets carried away and says he would now bet his sword again, and moreover, all his possessions. Chung smiles and thinks that this was really what he was wanting. Then he says that now it is the turn of the ghost voice. She accepts and goes up to Ji. The ghost voice says she is sorry. Chung smiles and thinks that regarding swordsmanship, his niece, who studied in Luoyun, is unbeatable. Chung is sure he will not lose to that fool's disciple. Then the fight begins, and in seconds, Chung is completely startled by what he is seeing. Ji assembles 1,000 swords into just one, and then she launches her attack again. The ghost voice has no reaction against this, as she has never fought against such a force. She wonders how 1,000 swords became one. As soon as she notices that it is impossible to defend against this, she screams, admitting defeat. The ghost voice falls to her knees on the ground and says that such a young girl already can use such immense power. 1,000 swords into just one. She is really impressed. Ji just sighs and says nothing. Chung says that the victory was for Master Xiao and his disciple, but they notice that, by Ji's appearance, she is close to her limit, as she seems to be very tired. Xiao jumps amid all the money he is winning and starts laughing too much, saying that it is all useless. Even if a god descended on Earth today, it would be useless. Xiao celebrates a lot and asks to bet once more. Yuncheng looks at Xiao and thinks that he is really very happy. Chung says that, for her age, this disciple is a genius for having reached the level of turning 1,000 into one. It seems that Xiao really has a great disciple. Chung says that unfortunately this is just for now. Then a person jumps from behind him towards Zi, hitting her belly, causing Zi to spit blood. As soon as Xiao sees the hit, he notes that this attack is the Luoyun palm of the Luoyun sect. Then he quickly jumps and catches Ji in the air. She coughs and apologizes to her master for having fallen. Xiao smiles and says that it's okay. Xiao thinks that they finally pulled their trump card. Muhan asks Ji if she was okay, but Zi did not answer as she was very tired. The woman who defeated Ji mocks, saying that it did not take time and she had already lost. This woman is called Liang. She is an elder of the Luoyun sect. Xiao hands over everything he had, almost crying, while Ji was completely upset back there, being comforted by Muhan. Xiao says he could not go back like this, as he had lost everything he had. How would he explain all this to the sect when he returned? Then he points to Chung and asks him to compete with him once more. Chung says he would accept to compete again. However, there was a small problem. Xiao had nothing more to bet, so how would they bet again? Xiao looks coldly and says he would simply bet his life. Some people think this is complete madness, but Yuncheng gets excited as soon as he hears this. Chung just tells Xiao not to expect to stay sober to try not to pay the debt. Chung is thinking that he would love to see what Xiao would manage to do without that sword. Xiao begins to release his power and tells Chung not to worry, as he would not back down from his bet. A huge sword appears behind him. Xiao says that unfortunately he would not lose. A hand begins to form, holding a huge sword. Xiao emphasizes that, as soon as he wins, Mr. Chung, besides returning all his fortune, will also have to pay with his life. Liang is astonished at what she is seeing right in front of her, is 1,000,000 swords condensed into one. Xiao begins his attack. Liang prepares to try to defend, but her sword is broken like a tree branch. The sword cuts Liang. She screams, How can there be such extraordinary power in your hands? While bleeding, Liang does not accept, because her sword was given to her by her master. This sword was strong enough to withstand the entire force of a cultivator in the nascent soul realm. Liang does not understand how Xiao had cut her in half with just one blow and without effort. She looks frightened and asks where this man with such inexplicable strength came from. Xiao continues his attack, hitting Liang once again, who screams in pain. Cheng is startled by all this. He runs and holds Liang, asking how she was. However, she does not answer. Cheng gets angry. Xiao says that apparently Cheng is also a disciple of the Luoyun sect. Xiao forms his sword again, and tells Cheng that to learn the Luoyun palm of the Luoyun sect, one must have a high status. Cheng just listens to all this. Then Xiao smiles, and says that it would not be unfair to kill Cheng there now. After Cheng saw Liang being humiliated by Xiao, he looked at the other fighters and shouted, asking what they were waiting for to attack. Everyone began to surround Xiao, saying that it was finally their turn to fight. Muhan held Ji and stayed close to her father, just watching the fight. Jiwan was impressed by the number of people ready to defeat Xiao. Meanwhile, in the middle of the hall, Xiao still stood still as everyone advanced towards him. Xiao began to laugh loudly and clap, saying that all the fighters were in the realm of the Golden Core. Finally, Master Cheng had prepared for today. Suddenly, Xiao became serious and stared at everyone, saying that unfortunately, today he could only kill 30 Golden Core cultivators by himself. He stepped on the ground, and a magical circle appeared, and his swords rose. Cheng, seeing Xiao's stance, said that in addition to being an idiot, he was a complete arrogant. There is no one who defeats 30 Golden Core people at once. Cheng said he still had a little help, the shadow of the Luoyun sword, which he had asked the sect leader before leaving the mountain. He began to invoke it. As soon as Ji saw the sword's shadow, she felt something very strong. Cheng screamed as he launched the sword, which after years of enhancement with the sect master's blood, the power of this celestial level weapon was no longer comparable to ordinary iron. Even if it was just the shadow of the sword, it was enough to kill a nascent soul cultivator. Ji began to feel the energy of the sword, and was absolutely sure that this sword was obviously the embryo of the sword that the Luoyun sect stole from the Lin family before, the one that was passed down from the ancestors of the Lin family. On the day the Luoyun sect massacred the Lin family, the sword was refined with the blood of the sacrifices of numerous Lin family members, so that the sword could be tempered and manifest its powers. Zi thought that, even after all these years, she could still feel her blood on the sword. Zi placed her hand on her chest and lowered her head, feeling dishonored, as they had just called this sword the Luoyun sword. Muhan, worried about Zi, asked if she was okay. Xiao, hearing this, began to think that when he began teaching Zi, the system showed that one of the conditions for awakening the innate body sword is to reach the foundation realm and obtain recognition from the ancestral king of the Lin family. Cheng launched the sword's shadow with all his strength, saying that today he would show young Master Xiao what it was to have a bit of humility. The sword went quickly straight towards Xiao. However, Xiao remained very calm, as if all this was a joke to him, and simply said that he thanked Mr. Cheng for showing and telling about the embryo. The shadow of the sword was already very close to Xiao's body, who simply called his sword with flexible fingers. Cheng, seeing this, became angry, as he thought that sword had already been taken from Xiao in the previous bets. As soon as he looked at the treasures, he saw that the sword was still there. Then he became even more angry, as Xiao had 2 swords and not just one. Xiao positioned his sword while thinking that the shadow of the Luoyun sword was so powerful that it was worthy of being a divine weapon of celestial level, even though the flexible finger sword was just a first-grade terrestrial level sword. The existence of the sword domain is to make the sword stronger in the hand of anyone. Even the best of swords turns into nothing. Xiao yelled and told everyone to experience the true power of the sword domain. Xiao threw his sword forward against the shadow of the sword, and the two collided in the air. But with some ease, the flexible finger's sword began to penetrate the energy of the shadow of the sword, causing a huge explosion. Suddenly, Xiao's sword emerged from the middle of the smoke without a scratch. He opened his fan, and mockingly asked if this was really all they could offer, as it was becoming boring. He had not yet felt a speck of fun. All the cultivators were fallen at his feet, leaving only Cheng holding Liang in his arms. Cheng looks back and wonders how a monster of this level could exist. He needs to escape as fast as possible from there. However, Xiao notices that Cheng wants to run away. He turns around and launches several of his swords, asking if Cheng really thinks he could escape. Cheng turns back, begging for his life, but it is too late. Xiao finishes off Chung without a second thought, and blood spreads everywhere. Yuncheng starts to get up, trembling from the ground, and as soon as he looks to the side he sees that Chung is dead. This scares him. Suddenly, Xiao and Ji stop right in front of him. Yuncheng falls seated out of fear upon seeing them there. He starts to scream for them not to come any closer and begs for his life. Xiao steps on Yuncheng's leg, causing him immense pain. Xiao says that, much as he would like, it would not be him who would kill him. Ji approaches, conjuring her strength in her sword, and calls Yuncheng uncle, asking if he remembers her. With a trembling and scared voice, he asks if she really is Lin Ji. He cannot accept it and starts screaming that this could not be possible. Without any regret, and with just one strike, Ji cuts Yuncheng in half, saying that his answer was correct, and as a reward, he would receive death. After all this, Xiao calls Ji and strokes her head, saying that she did very well, but that next time she should not use the sword so brutally. Thus, when taking care of an enemy, one must not let them not feel much pain. So next time, she should try with a blunt blade. This will surely bring greater pain and cause a slow and painful death. Ji is happy and thanks him, saying that she understood and learned something new. Muhan's father is surprised by this teaching from Xiao and says that her master is really a sincere man, right? Muhan agrees with her father. Xiao calls Muhan and tells her that Mr. Chung has lost all his fortune to him, so she should take care of everything. Meanwhile, he would take Ji to visit the Luoyun sect. Muhan says that's fine. They could go ahead and leave the rest with her. Meanwhile, at the Luoyun sect, in the house of the leader Wen Yuan, he was sitting, conjuring magic on the sword that he had stolen from the Lin family. He starts to laugh and prepares himself. 10 years had passed, and the last soul of the Luoyun sword is finally about to completely submit to him. All the success or failure of 10 years of work depended only on this last move. So, he shoots a wave of energy towards the sword. As soon as the compressed energy in the sword starts to come out, it goes directly outside. The sword begins to tremble and throws Wen Yuan backwards. As soon as he gets up, he puts his hand on his chest and clearly feels that he has not fully mastered the sword. Then, he wonders why he was suddenly rejected like this by the sword. Suddenly, someone outside the room starts screaming, saying that the soul lamps of senior sister Liu Yu, Wang Wencheng, and Yuncheng have been extinguished. The leader cannot believe this. So he gets up and quickly opens the door, asking what was happening. Meanwhile, the energy of the sword starts to move, leaving the room, passing through the window, traveling through the whole sect, until it reaches a person who is hiding behind a rock. This person is Ji, who is concentrating on finding the sword. Xiao observes this and comments that the ancestral sword of the Lin family was refined with the essence and blood of the Lin family. Ji had said she could feel the existence of the sword through the blood, and this was the first time Xiao heard this in his entire life. As soon as Ji finishes, Xiao asks what the situation is. Ji smiles and says that she really felt the sword. The people of the Luoyun sect probably still have not been able to conquer that sword. Ji points out that she has already left her spiritual consciousness in the sword. As soon as she finds it, she would be able to submit it. Xiao says that this is really incredible. Since everything is ready, today they would invade the entire Luoyun sect at once. As Xiao prepares for this, Wen Yuan is checking the soul candles and is really angry at what he sees. Then he starts to say that all this is Cheng's fault. The last time he had been in contact, he had said that his son had been killed by a wandering cultivator. So they had to invite a shadow of the Luoyun sword to deal with him, and call over 30 golden core elders to accompany him. And even then, in the end, they made a fool of themselves, all being killed by just one man. Wen Yuan turns to the man who was there and asks what was happening, but the man says he still didn't know anything. All he knew is that Elder Cheng had invited 30 golden core elders to fight against their enemies, but it seems they were completely annihilated. Wen Yuan punches the table in great anger and says they were a bunch of trash, as there were more than 30 people, in addition to the shadow of the Luoyun sword, and even then, they were no match for a single person. Wen Yuan turns to the man and yells, asking to set all the formation to the maximum level, gather everything they had, all the guardians, because they didn't know who it was nor what they were plotting. At any moment, they could suffer an attack. On the other side, at the Luoyun sect, Xiao and Ji were analyzing the situation. Xiao notices that the level of the defensive formation of the mountains was very high. Ji takes her sword and asks if they could break everything. Xiao says yes, they could break the barrier with some ease. However, that would be something very noisy and conspicuous. Xiao points out that until they locate the Lin family's sword, it's easier to go unnoticed. He says he has an idea. Then he explains the whole plan to Ji, who is surprised by the idea. Then they start to put the plan into action. Wen Yuan and other men meet Ji and Xiao. Ji starts to cry and say that this is not good. Elder Yuncheng and Elder Lin have been murdered. Wen Yuan asks Xiao and Ji who they were. Xiao, with all his clothes dirty, says that Ji is the illegitimate daughter of Master Yuncheng and he is her personal bodyguard. Xiao starts to explain that on the night Yuncheng did not return home, he decided to ask some people, and discovered that Yuncheng had been murdered by a mysterious man at the Wang family's house. Wen Yuan, suspicious, releases a small amount of energy that cuts Ji's arm, drawing a bit of her blood. He passes this blood on a destiny letter of Yuncheng. This will reveal if the blood from her origin is the same. As soon as the result comes out, it shows that she really had a connection with Yuncheng. Wen Yuan calms down a bit, but does not lower his guard. He asks them why they were there on the mountain. Xiao bows down and reverences Wen Yuan, saying that they had learned that there was a mysterious man who faced 30 Golden Core elders and massacred all, including the city lord's mansion. They feared that it was a personal enemy of Yuncheng, and therefore they climbed the mountain to seek protection from the Luo Yun sect. Ji starts to talk to Wen Yuan and says that she heard from her father Yuncheng that the sect master had suffered a violent backlash while refining the embryo of the Lin family's sword and has been seeking a way to alleviate the pain. Ji uses her sword to cut her arm and says that the Lin family has an ancestral method for refining swords. The Lin family has been making swords for generations, and the Lin family's blood can naturally tame the souls of swords. She extends her cut arm and emphasizes that this also has a miraculous effect of relieving the wounds caused by the relationship with the sword's soul. Wen Yuan looks at this and thinks that she even knows about the embryo of the Lin family's sword. Wen Yuan steps forward and asks Ji to show now the method she mentioned. He emphasizes that it's better she doesn't try any tricks. Wen Yuan releases his energy and says that if they try anything, they will have to face the consequences. Ji says there is no problem, he could try. Then, her blood starts to come out of her arm and travel through Wen Yuan's body. He closes his eyes and thinks that he can really feel all the internal wounds caused by the Luo Yun sword are really healing. After this, Wen Yuan turns around and invites them to enter. Xiao hugs Ji, and they start to enter. Wen Yuan stays a bit behind and speaks with one of his followers, saying he would decrease the investigation of Elder Cheng's incident and the others while he is away. No one can open the mountain's protection formation. Moreover, he should arrange a place for Xiao and Ji to stay. Xiao looks at this and thinks that this is indeed a real opportunity. During the night, in the training room, Xiao and Ji are sitting, training. A large amount of energy surrounds the two. The focus is for Ji to reach the first level of foundation creation. Xiao transfers 200 days of cultivation to Ji, who manages to break through to the first level of foundation creation. The system opens and notifies that the host has transferred 200 days of cultivation to his disciple and will be rewarded with 3 times that amount, receiving 600 days of cultivation. Xiao tells Ji that now she has the cultivation level of the first level of foundation creation. As soon as she obtains the Lin family's sword embryo, she will be able to awaken her innate body sword. Ji does not understand anything and asks what is innate body sword. Xiao smiles and says it's nothing serious. They should proceed with the plan. Then, they leave the room, and, on top of a roof, Xiao asks if Ji really could find the sword. Ji says yes, there is nothing to worry about. Xiao says he trusts her and asks her to lead the way. The two start to move forward. They arrive at one of the houses and a guard was on watch, but was completely passed out, sleeping. Xiao says it's no problem anymore, as he had lowered his and her aura. No one below the nascent soul realm will be able to sense them there. After closing the door, they finally find the sword. Xiao tells Ji to start refining calmly, as he would protect her from anything. Ji approaches the sword, sits on the ground and starts to conjure her energy, casting it onto the sword. This starts to create a reaction in the sword, and waves of energy begin to come out of it. This hits Ji, who ends up getting hurt. She thinks the sword still retains the spiritual consciousness of the Luo Yun sect leader. With that, the guard wakes up and asks who was there. The man quickly grabs something and breaks it in his hand, which sends a signal to the sky. Xiao gets angry and thinks that it seems impossible to hide the truth. He summons his swords and says that if that's the case, then it's time to make a mess. Meanwhile, Wen Yuan was traveling on top of his sword, and noticing the signal, turns around frightened as someone was attempting to steal his Luo Yun sword. This was clearly an enemy attack. After the signal, quickly several men arrive there and say that Xiao was surrounded. Then they ask who dares to act so recklessly in the Luo Yun sect, and ask for Xiao's name. He then goes outside and says that, unfortunately, today, without his permission, No one would be able to enter this building. Xiao points his fan at everyone there and says they could all fight together if they wished. Xiao sends his swords towards the men there. The men start to create magical circles and ask how Xiao can be so arrogant in front of everyone there. The Golden Core practitioners, although only skilled in sword abilities, quickly see Xiao's attacks begin to destroy ancestral weapons with just one hit and hit them one after another. Xiao, seeing this, smiles and says that the last time he killed 30 Golden Core cultivators, he thought they were drunk and therefore were not able to fight well. But based on what you are showing me, it seems that the Luo Yun sect is nothing more than this bunch of trash. As soon as they hear this, they despair in knowing that the man who killed the 30 cultivators all at once was this man right in front of them. Xiao starts to float, and an overwhelming energy begins to surround his body. Xiao says he would not change his name or his surname. Xiao looks straight into the eyes of everyone there and says his name is Xiao Xuan from the Nanli sect. After this night, if anyone alive from the Luo Yun sect still has the courage to face me, remember this name and look for it. One of the cultivators starts to say that he does not believe Xiao could really be from the Nanli sect, but within a radius of 10 kilometers, the only one that could compete with the Luo Yun sect is the Nanli sect. He orders everyone to attack to capture the intruder who is in the sect. Xiao smiles and thanks them for their courage, as thanks to this he would have a bit of fun. Xiao begins his attack, controlling his swords which, without much trouble, begin to hit each of the cultivators one by one, who scream in pain and beg for help. Xiao, flying with several swords around him, and one hand holding a giant sword behind, goes near the cultivators who were fallen, and asks if that was really all they had to offer. He looks with a psychopath expression, and emphasizes that he didn't even get to show all his true power. The leader of the cultivators, lying on the ground, raises his head and points his finger at Xiao, saying that soon the leader of the Luo Yun sect would arrive and would cut Xiao into pieces. Xiao laughs, opens his fan and stops his attack, saying that then he would wait. A few seconds later, someone comes screaming from afar. As soon as Xiao looks up, he sees that it is Wen Yuan, the leader of the sect, flying in his direction, furious. Xiao prepares to fight again, saying that this was faster than he thought. Xiao defends himself with his power and the two swords collide, but Wen Yuan's sword starts to cut through Xiao's sword. A bright flash occurs and the two separate. Wen Yuan stares intently at Xiao and says that the thieves from the Nanli sect really have a lot of courage, as they dared to enter the sacred territory of the Luo Yun sect. Xiao puts his swords in attack position again and responds to Wen Yuan that the Luo Yun sect is nothing. In fact, it's a trash sect. Just one man was able to defeat all the elders without the slightest difficulty. Isn't that right, Wen Yuan? Then, Xiao prepares and starts to make some different movements and asks Wen Yuan to try this attack. The swords go out in attack at an impressive speed, leaving several trails where they passed. Wen Yuan holds his sword firmly and prepares for the attack. Wen Yuan yells and with just one blow, defends against Xiao's two swords and asks how he dares to insult the Luo Yun sect. Wen Yuan attacks Xiao, saying he thinks too highly of himself. However, Xiao quickly dodges. He looks at Wen Yuan's sword and thinks that this sword is really incredible. It must be at the peak of its cultivation. Xiao also analyzes the movements and strikes of Elder Wen Yuan and realizes that, probably, after using his blood for so many years to refine the divine sword, Wen Yuan might have injured his foundation. That's why he could not advance. The real power of Wen Yuan is probably above the nascent soul. Xiao calls his swords back and thinks that this could be a small problem. Xi needs to finish mastering that sword as soon as possible. Several swords start to appear around Xiao. Wen Yuan starts to look at this and wonders if this is really sword ki, and if this movement can be used on a physical sword. He also notes that just one of the swords is already quite powerful. It's definitely of the highest level. But more and more swords appeared, and as soon as Wen Yuan really looks up, he is completely scared, and thinks that there were tens of thousands of the highest level swords. This is not a sword technique. The correct thing to say is that it's a supreme divine skill. Wen Yuan, seeing the size of Xiao's power, thinks that fighting him like this clearly would not work. Wen Yuan thinks he would need to use all the power he could find. Then, he sticks his sword into the ground, and an energy starts to come out of it, and hits the shield that protected the Luo Yun sect. Wen Yuan yells that his only hope is to activate the great protective formation of the mountain, as the Luo Yun sect is not something just anyone can handle. Suddenly, a huge beam of energy comes quickly in the direction of Xiao, who is startled for a moment. However, he dodges with ease. As soon as Xiao looks to the side, he sees that the shot made a huge hole in the ground. Xiao says that as far as he knew, the mountain protector of the Luo Yun sect had been abandoned by the first sect master. Since then, 100 years had passed, and her power had not diminished in the slightest. He thinks that with this attack, all shadows of the flexible finger swords had completely disappeared. If it had hit him, clearly he would have had a big problem. Thus, he needs to be a bit more careful with this fight. Suddenly, a very strong pink energy beam begins to rise to the sky, catching Xiao's attention. As soon as he really sees it, he says that it is finally done. Z was able to master the sword just in time. A system window opens and notifies that the host has assisted his disciple in activating the innate body sword of the terrestrial level. The reward is 10 times greater, being rewarded with the talent of the innate body sword of the celestial level. Xiao closes his eyes, and energy begins to surround his body. He starts to say that this feeling of the power of the innate body sword is truly amazing. He was feeling as if he had acquired an additional understanding of every trace of sword energy that roams between heaven and earth. This sword energy arrives at a constant rate. A lot of energy begins to concentrate in Xiao's body while he is in the air. Wen Yuan gets scared seeing this and wonders if he is really about to make a major breakthrough. Wen Yuan doesn't waste time and starts to conjure his strength, creating several circles with his energy. Another blue energy starts to circulate there. Wen Yuan says he has no more time. He would explode Xiao at that exact moment. Wen Yuan's eyes shining as he yells for Xiao to show his true power and how much he would manage to advance. But out of nowhere, the energy circles that Wen Yuan had created begin to disappear, leaving him scared and confused. He tries to create new circles, but the mountain's protection no longer responds. Wen Yuan wonders why the mountain's protection was no longer under his control. Xiao begins to walk with overwhelming energy coming out of his body, and with a penetrating look, says that Wen Yuan is not a good leader. A great sword begins to form above them, containing overwhelming energy. Xiao, while forming his sword, says that it is more than obvious that the true Luoyun sword is hidden within the protective formation of mountains of his Luoyun sect. And yet, he still wants to steal the embryo of the sword that the Lin family had not even refined yet. Xiao's sword was almost completely formed. Xiao, indignant, says that Wen Yuan did not even hesitate to spend his essence and blood to nurture the sword embryo. This is despicable and ridiculous for a sect leader. Finally, Xiao's sword was complete. Then, a giant hand begins to descend rapidly, holding the colossal sword that was now under Xiao's control. He emphasizes that if the sect leader was nothing but immoral trash for acting in such a way, as punishment for these acts, Xiao declares that the Luoyun sword is now his, as he would take the sword away. Xiao was angry and indignant. He points his attack at Wen Yuan and says that he should pay for the lives of the Lin family members who died back then, and life is paid with life. Wen Yuan screams for mercy, but with just one strike, Xiao begins to destroy everything around him, instantly killing Wen Yuan and splitting the mountain in half. The cultivators who were there begin to tremble before the absolute power that Xiao showed, capable of cutting the sect's mountain in half. Xiao catches everyone's attention and begins to say that all those who participated in the massacre of the Lin family must be more conscious. Xiao orders them to cut off their own arm and leave. If they do not do this and wait for Xiao to try to cut it himself, then in that case, the entire Luoyun sect will be killed. The members realize they have no way to fight against a man like this. Some start to cry and say that their child is in the sect and did nothing to suffer. So he himself would accept to pay the price and cuts his arm off. The other members, one after another, start to say that they had family within the sect and cut their arms and hands for the safety of their families. Xiao stops his attack and lets the men go. As everyone was leaving, Xiao thinks that one only knows pain when the Reaper's blade is under their head, for none of them showed mercy when they massacred the families of other people. Z appears, happy and smiling, and yells for her master to show that she has finally successfully conquered the sword embryo. She says she has chosen the name Lacquer for the sword. She comes running up to her master, saying that after conquering the Lacquer sword, she feels that cultivation has become much easier than before. The Qiwanqian sword, in which she was not very proficient in sword energy, suddenly began to make sense. Xiao says that, without a doubt, she has done very well. Xiao imagines that what is happening is probably the effect of having successfully awakened the innate body sword. Z sees several buildings cut in half and asks if there was a big battle there. Xiao replies yes, the head of the Luoyun sect had been killed. Then, he proposes to Ji that the two could take control of the Luoyun sect. Ji is shocked and asks if Xiao no longer wants to be an elder of the Hongmeng sect. Xiao makes a silence gesture to Ji and asks her to speak quietly. Actually, his plan is about doing all this secretly. Xiao begins to explain that he would ask the Su family to send someone to take care of this, and he would just stay in the shadows, collecting money and being the boss without appearing. After this, Xiao calls Ji to leave, as he had to take care of this quickly. After Xiao's return to the Luoyun city, he helped the Su family take control of the city. Although the Wang family was not satisfied, they lost all their possessions to Xiao, and now did not dare to say anything, just cried for the death of Mr. Cheng. With the resources of the Luoyun sect, the Su family gained control of the Luoyun city. Thanks to Xiao's orders, a series of facilities similar to urban buses, pulled by horses, were inaugurated, making the economy of the Luoyun city grow rapidly, as each person had to pay 2 cents to travel through the entire city, and they could get off whenever they wanted. In their free time, Xiao gave Ji and Muhan additional initiations. Now, both had been promoted to the foundation creation level. Zi already demonstrates great skill with her energy, and is currently at the 2nd level of foundation creation. Muhan responded quickly to Xiao's teachings, and also shows great control of her energy, currently at the 1st level of foundation creation. After all this, Xiao also took some time to rest a bit. Ji kept him company while Muhan went through the pharmacy reports, saying that since the Golden Core elixir was put on sale, it received a lot of attention from cultivators. Every time they are put on the shelves, they sell out the same day, and this brings a very good estimate. Muhan says that according to the calculations, they are thinking of a daily sales flow of 10,000 bottles in the future. Muhan's eyes shine with happiness as she says that the daily earnings just from the Golden Core elixirs could reach 1 million low-grade spirit stones, not to mention the benefits of other projects boosted by the Golden Core elixir. Xiao picks some grapes, lies back down while Ji massages his shoulders, and thinks that finally, they have arrived. Clearly they were rich and he was at the peak of his career, so he could lay back a bit and enjoy this moment. Someone yells Xiao's name. A person all in black was approaching quickly. As soon as Xiao sees who it is, he smiles and asks how he had free time to come over today, calling him nephew. Xiao asks how the sect master was doing and invites Ye to eat some fruits. Ye says he is not hungry and that the sect master had sent a message. Ye prepares his voice and starts to shout, saying that the master found out that recently Elder Xiao had completely destroyed the Luoyun sect. By any chance was he thinking of taking another job? Xiao even spits out the water he was drinking, cleans himself up and says that, as always, the sect master was well informed. But Xiao asks Ye to go back and tell the master that Xiao's loyalty to the Hongmeng sect was as clear as the sun and the moon, and that the Luoyun sect is just a place to make some extra income. Ye thanks and says he would send the message, but there was one more thing. In 3 days, there would be the sect competition. Ye emphasizes that if Xiao really is loyal and plans to continue in the sect, he should return in time. Xiao crosses his legs and tells him not to worry as he would be present. She stands up, stretches his body and says it's better for them to hurry up and pack and get ready for the competition. Muhan and Zi agree with him. Ji turns to Muhan and tells her that there are some people she should be cautious of as soon as they return to the sect. Just thinking about it, Muhan already feels a headache, but she asks who these people would be. Ji, with an expression of anger and hatred, begins to explain that initially, these people were disciples of Master Xiao, but they betrayed him and tried to kill him. Ji says he would explain everything properly. Muhan is a bit surprised and says she would listen carefully. Meanwhile, at the Hongmeng sect, on the 6th peak, Wang Na and his 2 disciples were talking. Wang Na says he heard that Xiao would soon be back in the sect, and therefore he wanted to know if his 2 disciples were ready. One of them says that the set of exercises that Mr. Wang Na passed to them should also combine with the cultivation of the essence and blood of spiritual beasts. He points out that he was feeling that these exercises are very similar to a demonic cultivation method. At that moment, Wang Na attacks his disciple with just his energy, throwing him away, saying that he was nothing but an ungrateful boy, as he knew nothing of the Hongmeng sect's techniques, and yet dared to question his master's teachings. The man stands up and kneels, apologizing, but in reality he was thinking that he didn't want to practice something as diabolical as this. Wang Na asks his other disciple, named Qiu Huan. He responds that he followed his master Wang Na's instructions to the letter and managed to advance to the 3rd level. But now, his cultivation was refined, and this allowed him to reach the 5th level of foundation creation. Wang Na smiles a lot and says that this result is excellent, as if Chu Huan could cultivate up to the 3rd level of the foundation. It wouldn't be a problem for him to become the leader among the younger generation of the Hongmeng sect. Wang Na stops smiling and stares at his disciples, saying that nothing else matters in the great sect competition. The only important thing is the prize of the violet key. This is a supreme treasure. There is a legend that, in the past, there was an immortal in the Hongmeng sect, and this violet aura is the great treasure that the immortal left after his death. Thanks to this, every 5 years, the Hongmeng sect holds a great competition, and the winner of each round receives a certain amount of Hongmeng's violet key. Wang Na begins to release a great energy around him and tells his disciples that they cannot lose a single round, as in each round they would win a bit of the violet ki, and the grand winner would receive the purest and first-class violet tu ki. And so, losing is unacceptable. If they lose, that's how it will end. Wang Na slams his hand very hard on the table, causing small cracks and breaking it, which scares his disciples. Chu Huan thinks that if he knew the 6th peak was so evil, he would have stayed in the 7th peak and lived happily. Wang Na stands up and tells the two to go rest. As soon as they leave, a person who was hiding, watching everything, says that even the disciples were already suspecting. He turns and says that Wang Na would need to speed up the process. Wang Na turns to him and says he didn't open the protective formation of the mountain for him to come there just to mock the situation. Wang Na asks how the preparations of this mysterious man's men are going. The man asks Wang Na not to worry about that, as he himself guarantees that he will make the entire Hongmeng sect know the meaning of the word fear. Then, the man begins to smile with completely strange eyes and a murderous face. A few days later, in the Hongmeng sect square, people were already arriving. A person asks Elder Wang why he was there. He replies that his grandson had obtained his spiritual root, and so he wanted to take him there to see the world. Some people commented on how beautiful and well-made the Russian square was, while others noted that this time there were several spectators from other sects. One person was eager to know which peak would be the winner. His friend says that probably the 1st peak, as they had been winning for a long time. The elder of the 1st peak is called Feng. He is currently at the 4th level of the Golden Core, and his disciples are geniuses. They have successfully reached the foundation. They are indeed very talented. Another man laughs and comments that they had forgotten one thing. The elder of the 2nd peak, Zuxuan, she has also recently reached the 4th level of the Golden Core. And under her, there are disciples as important as the green and purple swords. Her strength should not be underestimated in any way. Not to mention there is also Zhang He, leader of the Hongmeng sect and leader of the main peak. The two friends start to comment that apparently there were only 6 elders there. Where could Xiao, the elder of the 7th peak, be? One of the guys says he probably didn't want to embarrass himself and therefore did not come, since his disciple depends on him to start her cultivation. She is nothing but a losing trash. Suddenly, a person in the center of the arena catches everyone's attention, saying he would explain the rules for the first round of the competition. The competition will take the form of a round battle. In each fight, 2 of the 8 peaks will be drawn to face each other. Whoever loses a single time will be recorded as a loser and fall. The 2 peaks selected in the draw, the losers will go back to the queue and wait until the next time, while the winner goes straight to the next match. The winner remains in the field and continues. If they win a total of 3 matches, they advance. If they lose a total of 3 matches, they will be eliminated. Subsequently, the distribution of cultivation resources within the sect will be determined based on the ranking of this competition, and the winner will also be rewarded with a high-level magical weapon, the Ruyi Qingfeng sword. The first round of the competition, the 6th peak against the 7th peak. Then, disciple Wang Zheng enters the arena, which surprises many people and makes them wonder if he wasn't from the 7th peak and why he was representing the 6th peak in this competition. A person shouts and says that Wang Zheng had betrayed his master a long time ago and now joined the 6th peak. Now, they would have something good to see. Zhang. He asks his disciple Chen if Xiao had not yet arrived. Chen replies that he still hadn't seen him anywhere. This makes Zhang He a little nervous. People laughed, saying that there was no one living on the 7th peak, so they would win by woe. They continue mocking that, on the 7th peak, only Xiao would be able to fight against a disciple of the 6th peak. The judge raises his hand and starts to say that since there is no one to represent the seventh peak, this battle is. But suddenly a glow in the sky appears, shouting for them to wait. It was Xiao saying he was late because he had slept too much. Wang Zheng, seeing this, gets annoyed because Xiao was still with the trash Ji by his side and even accepted another trash as a disciple. Wang Zheng starts to smile and thinks that this will be perfect, as he was lucky to get a weak opponent. He just wanted to see the faces of the others when he stepped on Xiao's disciple. Quickly, Xiao says that Muhan should fight, as this is the perfect moment for what they had trained. Muhan promptly says she would accept. Ji calls Muhan and says she still doesn't know Wang Zheng, but it was he who betrayed Master Xiao and tried to kill him. Ji says that Muhan should not have mercy on a person like that. Muhan looks at Wang Zheng and thinks that she only found out what had happened to Xiao through Ji. She didn't expect that, as soon as she arrived there in the sect, she would face the traitor right away. Muhan starts to release energy and thinks that, if that's the case, she must give her best and not embarrass her master. The judge introduces Muhan, saying that she was currently at the foundation level, Zhang. He is surprised by this, as Muhan is quite young for such an achievement. It seems that Xiao has found a talented new disciple. Meanwhile, in the center of the arena, Wang Zheng starts to mock Muhan, saying that clearly she hasn't learned anything from Xiao. Then, out of pity, he would let her attack first. Muhan gets angry and says that there is no place for traitors on the seventh peak. Muhan shouts that Wang Zheng is nothing but a scoundrel who deceives his own master and destroys his ancestors. Such trash is not worthy of calling Xiao master. Wang Zheng gets angry at these words and grabs his sword, saying that as can be seen, Muhan doesn't know what's best for her. Then, he asks her not to cry after he finishes this and points his sword at Muhan and tries to hit her, saying that she should be careful because Xiao himself had praised his spring rain sword skills. However, as soon as he looks, Muhan is staring at his face while holding his blow with just 2 fingers. Wang Zheng doesn't understand how she can do such a thing. Muhan starts to exert her fingers, saying that it is indeed a beautiful technique. Wang Zheng's sword starts to crack until it breaks into pieces. Muhan remains serious and asks what kind of evil swordsman Wang Zheng is if he can't even break through the protective aura that Muhan created. Wang Zheng is taken aback by this, and seeing his broken sword, he starts to tremble and says that he surrenders. Muhan asks him to leave the arena, but she quickly realizes that this is a trick, because the sect competition requires that they don't stop for anything. Muhan quickly conjures her energy in her hand and says that Wang Zheng is lucky, that according to the rules, she can't kill him. Now she's going all out and applies her technique. Wang Zheng quickly turns around and shouts that she's getting ahead of herself. Their techniques collide, and a great explosion occurs in the center of the arena. As soon as the explosion passes, Wang Zheng is all injured, screaming in pain, while Muhan is standing in front of him. Wang Zheng crouches in pain with his arm completely wounded and burned. He screams and asks if Muhan really is at the foundation creation level, because with that power it's impossible. Wang Zheng, still not reconciled to this, asks if she has this level of cultivation because she is forced to worship Xiao as her master. Muhan smiles without a scratch on her body and says that it's been half a month since she was just at the first level of QI refinement, but now she's at the first level of foundation creation. Muhan emphasizes that, thanks to the training, initiations, tendon and marrow cleansing by Master Xiao, she is now stronger than before, and unfortunately, this is something that traitorous trash is not even worthy of envying. Wang Zheng can't believe that Xiao really was able to give initiation and transmit skills to his disciples. On top of all this, he did a marrow cleansing. It's unbelievable. The judge enters the middle of the arena and announces that the 7th peak is the winner of the first match. But suddenly, a red lightning bolt appears right in front of Muhan, saying that they should wait a minute. This person is Chu Huan. He looks at Muhan saying that he will challenge the 7th peak. This scares the spectators because Q Huan really challenged the 7th peak. According to the rule, if someone takes the initiative to challenge a disciple, the challenged cannot deny. However, the elder can decide which disciple will fight. People continue commenting and asking if there really is anyone on the 7th peak who can face Chu Huan. Most people say no, because in the beginning Chu Huan was small compared to Xiao, but now he is at the 5th level of foundation creation. With this level of cultivation, he could even become an elder of a peak. The judge announces the challenger Chuhuan, who is currently at the 5th level of foundation creation, and asks Elder Xiao to send his disciple to fight. Xiao simply says the name Ji, and she quickly appears in the arena. She shouts that she is ready. Xiao smiles and asks her to be a bit careful while fighting. Chuhuan looks with a very arrogant gaze and asks if slaves were qualified to step into the arena. So she really should be careful while fighting. Xiao smiles and says he meant for Chuhuan to be careful. Quickly, one of Ji's swords was just inches from Chuhuan's face, who is startled by the situation but manages to dodge quickly. However, the sword still manages to wound his face. Xiao starts laughing in the arena and says that Zi should smash everything. She looks at him and says she would follow his orders. Chuhuan, annoyed by all this disrespect, wields his sword and says they don't know what they're talking about. A phoenix appears around him, and flames envelop him, but Zi doesn't move an inch. Wang Na asks if Chuhuan is using the Faiyan sword technique, which was created by Xiao to adapt to his sword skill. Meng Yu replies yes. As soon as Chuhuan defeats his disciple with the sword he himself taught, the expression on Xiao's face will definitely be beautiful to see. Ji, seeing all this show, just laughs and launches one of her swords. Chuhuan wraps himself with his energy and tries to defend himself with his sword while saying that Ji really is brave. But as soon as Ji's attack hits Chuhuan's sword, it breaks it in half, which leaves him completely shocked. He looks at it, wondering what happened there and how it was possible. Ji, still on guard, says it's just the handling of the Feiyan sword. It's not that difficult. For 5 years, Chuhuan trained with Master Xiao and learned only this? Ji says she feels ashamed. She emphasizes that from such a thing, according to the rules, if the sword is cut and the winner is already decided, the other person must leave. However, she can't stand the way Chuhuan thinks he's so superior. So, Ji takes a new sword from her bag and throws it in front of Chuhuan, asking him to try again. He gets annoyed by this, but picks up the sword saying that, "This is really ridiculous. This time his energy is red." Chuhuan gathers all his energy in the sword and jumps to attack Ji while shouting for her to stop being so full of herself. How dare she speak to him like that? Ji dodges the blow with extreme ease and cuts Chuhuan's arm. He falls to the ground on his knees, screaming in pain in his arm. Ji approaches him and says that at the beginning of the fight, he asked who she was. Ji says it's now clear who she really is. Ji looks at him smiling and says that even if he trained for another 100 years and swung 10,000 swords, an idiot like him couldn't even touch her. Chuhuan screams in anger, but Ji starts throwing several swords on the ground, asking him to try as many times as he wants because he will be humiliated every time. This leaves Chuhuan speechless. Ji looks at him again and says that to prove how much he's traitorous trash, she would admit defeat if he could just touch her. Everyone in the audience was shocked by this, because all the swords Ji threw on the ground are Earth-level magic weapons. They couldn't believe that a disciple had such high-class weapons, because the Sec Master only has 5 or 6 Earth-level magic weapons. Zhang He thinks that Xiao has really become very wealthy. Xiao, in the midst of everyone with his legs crossed, says that the life of the wealthy is kind of boring, because it's all so simple. Chuhuan puts his hand on his face and starts laughing a lot. Zuri doesn't understand the reason for the laughter. A strange energy begins to come out of Chuhuan's body. He says he really had heard that Master Xiao had given initiation and transmitted his skills. At first, Chuhuan thought it was just lies, but now that he's seeing it, it's really true. Moreover, he also gave them these magic weapons, right? Everyone is surprised by what's happening. Xiao starts to analyze this better and realizes that Chuhuan's spiritual power was deviating. Chuhuan, with a completely different face, starts to say that Xiao really turned a useless person like her into a genius. He really is willing to spend a lot of money. Chuhuan grabs the sword with a psychopathic face and asks if Ji really thinks he only knows the Faiyan sword technique that Xiao had taught. The energy emanating from Chuhuan takes the form of a dragon. Then, he charges with full force, but Ji dodges again. But this time, he attacks again and very quickly, saying that this technique is of the lowest level among the celestial levels, which Elder Wang Na had given him. Chuhuan again underestimates Ji, saying that she had never touched a sword above the earthly level with the trash of her master Xiao. Chuhuan's attack was close to hitting Ji, but she just smiles and summons her true sword. She says she knows the handling of the celestial level, not to mention that she has a celestial level sword. With just one strike, she disarms Chu Huan again, who is impressed by this. Ji emphasizes that she didn't think she would have to use her sword against him, but since he is pathetic and arrogant, with a set of celestial sword techniques, she would let him experience the taste of her sword. Ji sighs, saying that the celestial sword technique Chu Huan had mentioned was just that. He couldn't even use it properly. Not to mention that some people really are completely useless, so they shouldn't blame the sword handling. Ji defeated him again, using the Feiyan technique. Chu Huan begins to tremble, scared, looking at his hands, thinking that he was defeated again by a mere slave. Ji approaches him and says that he shouldn't blame her for not remembering. If he admits defeat now, there would still be time for him to leave and recover. However, if he continues with this and goes mad, she would eliminate him mercilessly. As a disciple of the Hongmeng sect, she must eliminate all evil from the sect. Chu Huan starts laughing again with his hand on his face, saying that he really lost again. All thanks to Xiao, who gave a celestial sword to a slave. He starts to lose control and scream that it was impossible. How could he lose to a talentless slave? Zhang Hui, seeing this, thinks that this scene is exactly like that of an ancient man before going mad and turning into a demon. Zhang Hui stands up and says that Chu Huan is almost going mad, so they should immediately stop the competition. The judge signals that the match was suspended. Disciples from both sides should leave the arena. Ji turns to leave and says that this trash was lucky this time, but Chu Huan was already out of his mind and asks if Ji really thinks he would run away like that because he wouldn't allow it. Several swords are created around him. Ji turns with a murderous look and says that this was really what she wanted. Chu Huan launches his swords at Ji. She prepares and says that she would show him not only the Feiyan sword technique, but also any other sword technique, even the true sword art. Chu Huan's swords kept coming at great speed. In the blink of an eye, Ji destroys all of Chu Huan's swords and turns the attack against him, saying that all this was taught to her by her master Xiao, and it's not any useless person like Chu Huan who could achieve this power. Chu Huan was completely defenseless and screams as Ji's attack approaches rapidly. He stands up, scared by Ji's strength, and asks them to stop this. Xiao just closes his eyes and asks Ji not to exaggerate too much. She smiles and asks Xiao not to worry, as she knew what she was doing. The swords pass straight through Chu Huan's body, leaving a mark on his face and his hair all cut by the swords. Chu Huan puts his hand on his body and asks if he's really alive. The entire audience starts laughing a lot. Chu Huan turns to them and asks what they were laughing at, and if it was him. Ji goes to him, smiling, with a mirror in hand, saying that she would be upset if he left without looking at her excellent work. She places the mirror in front of him, smiling, and asks him to look. Chu Huan is terrified by his state. Ji says that her swords contained her spiritual power, so until Chu Huan can really defeat her, neither the hair nor the wounds on his face will return to normal. She turns to leave and tells him that it's better for him to pray to God for a chance to defeat her in this life, and every time he holds his sword, he will have to remember this day for the rest of his miserable life. Ji asks Chu Huan not to delude himself, as he is nothing. He falls to the ground, on his knees, looking at his own hand, thinking about everything that happened. He bows before Ji, accepting defeat. The audience starts commenting again, saying that the power of the seventh peak is truly something completely terrifying. A disciple threw numerous high-quality swords on the ground and still had a celestial-level sword. Muhan says that Ji is really scary when she's angry. Xiao smiles and says that this was expected of his disciple, as she had really learned a lot from him. He calls his disciple Chen and asks if he still remembers that, many years ago, Zhang He personally expelled a traitor from the sect. Chen says he remembers. Well, he was the brother of the elder of the sixth peak. He heard that he defected from the solar and lunar ghost sect. Chen asks if Zhang He thinks that the sixth peak is helping him. Zhang He says he hopes he is wrong, but he believes so. Then he asks Chen to investigate this situation more closely. Chen bows and says he would immediately. The judge signals again and says that the new matchup drawn is the seventh peak against the main peak. He is scared by this. Chen asks his master what he should do now. He closes his eyes and asks Chen to fight against Ji. At the level she is now, she is probably stronger than many elders of the sect. It will be a great lesson for Chen, a fight against her. Then, he agrees to this and goes straight to the arena. The judge signals for them to start the fight. Ji looks at him with her hand on her waist and says she didn't imagine she would meet him so soon in the first round. Chen starts his sword and says that no matter how strong Ji was, now she should just fight with everything she has. Ji puts her hand on her mouth with a scary smile and asks if he was really sure about that. She starts laughing a lot, then opens her arsenal again and throws numerous magical weapons into the arena. She thanks him for taking good care of her, so she would take good care of him. Chen is scared by all these magical weapons. The spectators can't believe this. Ji climbs on the cannon, crosses her arms, and around her there are 2 shields, several swords. Ji looks at Chen, eager to fight, and calls him to the fight. Chen looks at this with just 1 sword he received as a gift, and that is still of low class. That's all he had. Chen throws his sword on the ground, saying that this crap is no match against all these magical weapons. Chen shouts for Zhang He to stop Ji, as she was already going too far. Zhang He, sweating coldly, says that by the rules, they don't prohibit the use of magical weapons in competitions. After all, a swordsman needs a sword for a competition. However, this was too much. Ji gets angry, as she could only use 1 at a time, but she agrees and stores everything again and asks Chen to attack her at once. Chen smiles and thanks her for that, then goes all out. While he was in the air, he thinks that if there is really only 1 sword, then he is not afraid, not even of a celestial weapon. Chen thinks he will finish this quickly, as he still needs to complete a mission. Ji smiles and says she would fulfill Chen's request. She creates a shield around her that blocks Chen's attack. She emphasizes that this shield is capable of withstanding the full force of a level 10 innate, so it would be perfect against Chen. He asks Ji to use all her ability and continues attacking her non-stop. Ji asks if he really could withstand it, because he wasn't even able to break through a simple shield like this. So, probably, Chen wouldn't even be able to touch her in this fight, right? This makes Chen furious. Thinking that a man can't say no, Chen shouts that what he showed is not the full strength of a level 10 innate. Right now, she would see his real strength. And he strikes her with all his force and really manages to break through the barrier. Muhan shouts for Ji to be careful, but as soon as he breaks through the barrier, a shield appears right in front of him, making him hit his head on the shield. Chen, with a bump on his head, says it's really surprising and asks if she has more. He jumps again to attack her, shouting that it won't be just 2 maximum strength blows. He destroys the first shield, and another appears. Then he uses 3 strikes, but another shield appears. Then, he uses 4 strikes. Ji remains calm and beautiful on the other side, not moving. After a while, several shields were cut on the ground. Chen was exhausted, but there were still 3 shields in front of Ji, who was sitting in a chair, relaxing, with sunglasses on, having a drink. Chen starts to tremble as he was completely exhausted and shouts that he cannot lose. But then he faints on the ground. The judge announces that the first round is over and the first place in this round is the 7th peak. Ji quickly moves around the arena, thanking everyone. The others in the audience couldn't believe that Chen was defeated just with Ji's defense. Another man says that he lasted a long time because he was able to destroy dozens of shields. Ji runs to Xiao, who says that she is very intelligent and full of tricks, so he is very happy to see this. Ji high-fives him, happily. A person looks at them, thinking that such a fighting style is scary. The 7th peak really has overwhelming power, they're just very noisy. Xiao asks Ji if she has always been dissatisfied with Chen, and that's why she wanted to defeat him head-on. Ji sighs and says that in the past, Chen was a much better cultivator than her, and therefore he was her rival. However, now, he is just at the 10th level of the innate, while she is at the 2nd level of foundation creation, so it is not necessary to use her true abilities against him. Muhan looks at her and says that now everyone is saying that Zhai is a bully. Soi's not at all happy about this, but she crosses her legs and raises her head, saying that, in short, she is no longer the Lin Ji of the past. With all the teachings she has been receiving from her master Xiao, her real goal is to challenge the true genius of sword handling. Xiao smiles, happily. Hearing this, Xiao says that Ji is truly worthy of being his disciple, but now they need to go back and rest well, as tomorrow they will have the second round. Wang Na, after seeing everything that happened there, is annoyed because he did not expect Ji to be so powerful. A woman named Ying says that this is truly an incredible competition. The man next to her, named Wei Ju, says that this little Hongmeng sect is certainly an extraordinary foundation, but it is no more than the Qin dynasty. Ying says that she secretly sent some spies to investigate the girl, the senior disciple of Elder Xiao of the Hongmeng sect, who was a normal person without cultivation a few months ago, but not long ago. Xiao alone massacred everyone in Lord Luo Yun's mansion, and also climbed the mountain alone to challenge the entire Luo Yun sect, and the result was the same. Now, these two major places have become his. Ying emphasizes that, based on Xiao's deeds and the current situation, he is an extremely dangerous and powerful person within the Hongmeng sect, as well as being able to connect strongly with a person. Ying asks if this is not the kind of talent they were looking for. Weiju asks Ying if she was wanting to recruit Xiao. She replies, yes, if she can get this year's grand prize, the Violet Key. In front of the 7th peak, someone shouts, Violet Key. This person is Muhan, who was asking what the Hongmeng Violet Key would be. Xiao explains that it is a specialty of the Hongmeng sect. It is distributed every year, according to the ranking of the grand competition. They say that people who practice with the Hongmeng Violet Key for a long time are blessed by luck. Xiao says that if they win this year's competition, they will get the first-class Violet Key. When they get the first-class Violet Key, the entire peak will experience an extraordinary change. Muhan is impressed because the Hongmeng sect was not so famous and has such an incredible treasure as this. Xiao agrees with her and says that he was also surprised when he first heard about it. However, it seems that in the past, the Hongmeng sect was a great sect. He smiles and says that they will test the effect of the Hongmeng Violet Key, then they continue to walk through the 7th peak. Zhu comments that the aura in the air of that place is much better, which allows them to achieve twice the results with just half the effort. Muhan approaches a golden tree and realizes that this is a necessary material to refine the infinite golden elixir, the infinite seed. She wonders why there are so many there. Looking closer, she notices that this year, the Violet Key of Hongmeng seems to be particularly stronger. Walking a bit further, Muhan notices that there are also several molten fire lotuses. Ji points out that with these molten fire lotuses, they could forge spiritual swords just like their master Xiao's. Upon hearing this, Xiao turns around smiling and says that they could try. After a long walk, they finally arrive at their resting place. Ji wonders why the house remodels automatically. Xiao replies that there are rumors that all the buildings of the Hongmeng sect were created by the Li Mountains, and seeing them today, Xiao believes in the legends. Xiao turns to his disciples and says it's time for them to enter and rest for the next round tomorrow. Muhan and Zi agree. Meanwhile, in the arena, the fights continued. Zheng was fighting against Linking and once again lost the fight. He finds himself in a not very pleasant moment for him. Linking mocks him, saying that she remembers the day he asked to join the 2nd peak, but was rejected by his master. She points out that apparently she does not see that Zheng has no intention of practicing sword handling, probably should not be there to study with her master on this subject. She asks if Zheng thinks that's why there are more people on the 2nd peak. She comes very close to him, who is kneeling on the ground and looks intently at Zheng, saying that, unfortunately for him, even if there were thousands of disciples on the 2nd peak, none of them would be interested in a man-trash with no value or reputation like Zheng. He lowers his head, clearly uncomfortable with these words, but Linking does not stop talking and says, she heard that Elder Xiao had customized sword techniques for his disciples, and that is the real reason why she is excited to see them. As Zheng continues to kneel in front of her, she points out that, from what she has seen, no matter who creates or how good the technique is, if the person using it is not good enough, it still doesn't work. This fight was a waste of time. It would be much more pleasant if it were with Ji. This makes Zheng completely angry. He begins to tremble and clench his hand on the ground, but to no avail. The judge gives the signal and announces the end of the fight. Now the 6th peak was disqualified for having accumulated 3 defeats. Seeing this, Wang Na becomes completely angry. saying that his two disciples are nothing but filthy trash. He turns to one of his subordinates and tells him to find Brother Changfeng and tell him that there is no hope for the sixth peak to be promoted. Wang Na points out that they all must prepare to attack the mountain to steal the violet key of Hongmeng as soon as the winner of the competition is announced. On the second day of competition, Ji was in the arena ready to fight in the second round. Bai, who was her opponent, says he wanted to learn the sword handling that Ji used, but he was concerned about the magical weapons that Ji had. So he prepares to fight and asks if she intended to use the magical weapons against him. Ji smiles and says she still didn't know. The fight begins and Bai comes at her with everything. Ji remains calm and prepares, because since she was able to recover the lacquer sword, she had a completely different feeling about fencing. After concentrating, Ji uses her innate creation Thunder Heart Step technique with extreme ease. Ji disarms her opponent as if it were nothing. With this Thunder Heart ability, Ji can identify all the weak points of her opponent at any moment during the fight. Bai is completely lost, as he almost didn't see Ji's movement. After that, he thanks her and says that the sword handling that Ji is using is really relentless, it is on a different level, and that's why he accepts defeat. The judge announces the end of the fight and says that the second peak has been defeated and the last winner is the seventh peak. The women in the audience begin to comment about Elder Xiao, saying that it is really amazing that, even after years in complete silence, he returns to the top in this way. The other one is enchanted by Xiao's beauty and wonders what kind of woman will win Elder Xiao's kindness. Meanwhile, Ji returns to her master's side. Xiao says that her fight was really beautiful to watch and the sword strike was excellent. Ji smiles, happy for the recognition she has been receiving from her master. Suddenly, a woman approaches them and calls Xiao. This woman is Zhuxuan. The three are surprised by this beautiful woman. Zhuxuan says that it has been a long time since they last saw each other. She points out that, apparently, Xiao is much better than before. He keeps looking at her and says that she also seems very well, as her aura is much stronger than before. It seems that she has gained a lot in her travels through life. Xiao begins to remember that when he entered the Hongmeng sect with Zhuxuan, his cultivation was something surprising, and Zhuxuan always tried to compete with him, and this bothered Xiao for always being in this situation where Zhuxuan created a rivalry in almost everything. But the future was harsh, as there came a day when Xiao could no longer evolve, his cultivation stagnated, and everyone began to underestimate him, except for Zhuxuan. She was the only person who, even with all this happening, continued to treat Xiao exactly the same as before. Zhuxuan was always tough on Xiao, saying that he couldn't just give up on everything. If he didn't want to go through this, he should train with her. And that's why Xiao is grateful to this day. He thanks Zhuxuan for everything she did and for taking care of him. Xiao says that he recently accepted 2 beautiful disciples and feels very excited when happy events like these occur. He asks how long Zhuxuan plans to stay there this time. Zhuxuan replies that this time she plans to stay for a few more days. She calls her 2 disciples and says they wanted to thank Xiao for saving them the time in the forest. Xiao smiles and asks if she isn't being too polite. Zhuxuan approaches Xiao and smiles. She says that this year he had won the prize, and with this first-class Hongmeng Violet Key, he will be able to advance his cultivation a lot. Xiao replies that Zhuxuan is also not bad at all, as she managed to go far in the tournament, finishing in 2nd place. As they continued the conversation, Wang Na just looked from afar, angry and dissatisfied with the outcome of this story. Around him, there were several men ready to fight. Wang Na says it's almost time. He gives the command for everyone to exterminate the Hongmeng sect. Then, several points of the sect that were peaceful began to receive attacks, and the whole confusion began. The guards didn't understand how they got there without anyone noticing. Their leader screamed at the others to steal the violet key in the main square of the sect. Chang Feng, the elder of the lunar and solar ghost sect, screamed at the sect leader. His current power is at the 1st level of the nascent soul. Chang Feng screamed, calling Zhang He an old thief. Behind him there was an army. Zhang He, looking at all this, says that Chang Feng really is a despicable person, as he had deserted to follow the lunar and solar ghost sect, and now dared to come back to cause trouble. Chang Feng smiles and says that now he is at the nascent soul level, while Zhang He still remained at the golden core. Changfeng orders Zhang He to kneel and beg for mercy and apologize for everything he did. Then, tie up Zhuxuan and hand her over to him. Changfeng starts to laugh and says that if all this is done, maybe he will leave and let the sect live for a while longer. Zhang He begins to release his power and says that the Hongmeng sect is not a place where he can enter like this and leave when he wants. He begins to conjure the protection formation of the mountain that he had prepared a long time ago for this moment. The energy around the sect begins to move, and this means that it is fully active. Suddenly, the protection begins to attack the invaders, hitting several at once. Changfeng says he had indeed heard stories that there was once a man who reached the immortal level in the Hongmeng sect, and that the power of the mountain protection formation was astonishing. Changfeng emphasizes that today, he can see it with his own eyes and confirm that it is indeed true. Suddenly, he begins to smile and says that, unfortunately, it would end there. The mountain protection begins to break. Zhang, he cannot believe what he is seeing. Everywhere, the protection is beginning to collapse. The sect members start to get scared as they look up and realize that the protection formation has been breached. They wonder what is happening there. Zhang, he turns around in fright as he knows this is not good. Upon further analysis, Zhang He realizes that demonic energy has invaded the first peak, and the main point of the mountain protection formation is focused on the first peak, which has now been corroded by the demonic energy. Zhang He starts to get really worried, as each of their moves was clearly well planned. The lunar and solar ghost sect had thought very well about what they were going to do. Zhang He takes action and mounts his bird, telling all his elders that he would return to the first peak and try to restructure the mountain's protection. Then, he would leave the invaders there for them. Zhuxuan and Xiao, side by side, say that he could go without worry, as they would take care of everything. Zhuxuan smiles and says that this reminds her a lot of 10 years ago. Xiao smiles and asks if she was referring to the time when she wanted to go down the mountain to see a play, the one that trapped the master at home with him, and soon was chased all over the mountain by the master's spiritual sword. Zhuxuan turns around and says that his skill is still as good as ever. She starts to strike several men at once and says she would go ahead. Zhuxuan looks at the invaders and says that if they had the courage to invade the Hongmeng sect, then they also had the courage to face death. She starts to conjure her energy, and again strikes several men at once. Xiao prepares his swords and says that Zhuxuan's green and purple swords did very well, so he couldn't fall behind. He begins to attack, causing a lot of damage to all those close to him, defeating numerous men at once. Bai and Linking get excited and say they would join in the fun too. The two start to fight together, and, combining their attacks and defenses, manage to cause some kills as well. Muhan also prepares for the fight. Z is not left behind either, but she comments that the fighting style of the second peak is the practice of dual swords, and only when the green and purple swords are used together do they show their true strength, and therefore she wants to fight against the two together when she has an opportunity. Muhan tells Z not to worry, that she would provide support and clear the way, so that she can fight more easily. Z advances fearlessly and says she would trust her life to Muhan. Z starts her attack and, with monstrous strength, throws several enemies away with just one blow. Muhan takes one of her medicines. With this, she will be able to control more magical weapons at once. Muhan concentrates, and several weapons start to appear simultaneously. Bai and Linking are impressed with the amount of high-level magical weapons that Muhan is controlling. Linking says that, apparently the seventh peak did not use all its strength during the competition, and yet it was an overwhelming victory against the other participants. Wang Na takes the opportunity and attacks Zhuxuan from behind, saying that all this is because of Master Zhang He's favoritism. Xiao yells for Zhuxuan to be careful. However, Xiao realizes that she would not be able to defend herself and, with a quick movement, he uses one of his swords to defend her. Wang Na cannot believe that, once again, Xiao is thwarting his plans. This makes him extremely angry. Zhuxuan wastes no time and takes advantage of Wang Na's lowered guard and attacks him with all her strength. Wang Na, with no other option, just yells and asks for help from Changfeng, who was fighting against Xiao. As Xiao attacked with his swords, Changfeng defended himself with a magical barrier, saying that Xiao's attacks were useless against it. Changfeng realizes that he would not have help from anyone at that moment, so he begins to conjure a large amount of energy and summons a large flag. This flag is called the Soul Summoning Banner. Several undead begin to appear all around. Changfeng commands them to attack. Zhu Xuan, seeing all this, tells Xiao that after Changfeng betrayed the Hongmeng sect, he had lost his way and turned into a monster. At that moment, Changfeng was out of his mind, laughing like a madman amidst his undead soldiers. Changfeng screams that they were neither humans nor ghosts, and that this was really cruel. Changfeng yells, furious with anger, saying that years ago he was willing to do anything for Zhu Xuan, but she treated him like nothing, and this made everyone ridicule him. He continues saying that all this was her fault. If it weren't for her disapproval, he wouldn't have risked going through this. In the end, his spiritual power went out of control, and he lost his cultivation completely, and that's why he can only practice the path of demons. Changfeng gathers all the soldiers and yells once more that if it weren't for her, he wouldn't be in this state. Zhu Xuan continues fighting fearlessly. She looks at Xiao and says that all the skeletons were close to the peak of the golden core, so he should be careful. But Zhao was not so worried about that. One of the skeletons approached. Ying and her elder Wei protect her with just one blow, knocking one of them down. She asks him if he thinks that, in the current situation, the Hongmeng sect would need help. Wei says that the elders of the Hongmeng sect were all cowards. They got too scared when they saw the soul summoning banner. Only the two young ones, a man and a woman, are worthy there. But they haven't crossed the golden core yet, and therefore it's difficult for them to deal with Changfeng, not to mention the master in the nascent soul realm of the lunar and solar ghost sect, the killer demon. Wei emphasizes that unfortunately, the Hongmeng sect will not be able to escape this disaster. Meanwhile, in the midst of the enemy army, two people were alive and fighting without hesitation. Zhu Xuan and Xiao were side by side. Ying begins to fight against some monsters while thinking that if the Hongmeng sect really cannot get rid of this disaster, they will not be able to help her. But she is impressed with the talent and determination of Xiao and Zhu Xuan. She says that if they can be accepted as her disciples, it would be a beautiful choice. Ying tells Wei that she wants to stay there and wait to see what will happen, and if Xiao or Zhu Xuan are in real danger, they should help immediately. Wei agrees with this and prepares to fight. Zhu Xuan continues fighting and calls her sword, cutting several skeletons at once. Wei says he heard that the Hongmeng sect has a dual-wielding technique that is at the bottom of the celestial levels. A single sword is already very powerful, but Zhu Xuan has already achieved great success with both swords. He fears that no one below the nascent soul realm will be able to compete with her. Ying hears this and smiles. While Zhu Xuan fought, a skeletal hand comes out of the ground and grabs her leg. She realizes that the skeleton's hand is poisoned and therefore she cannot move. Several skeletons surround her and use their chains to attack her. They manage to capture her. At that moment, Zhu Xuan is completely vulnerable, as she has no strength to break free or move. Suddenly, a huge skeleton appears behind her. She feels this presence and turns around to see what it was. As soon as she looks, she sees that the skeleton was indeed much larger than the others. Changfeng says that really, over the years, Zhu Xuan had improved her skills, but unfortunately this is the end for her. The giant skeleton begins to move and raises its hand to grab her. Ying, seeing that Zhu Xuan was in danger, tells Wei that it was time to act. But before they could do anything, someone yells for the monster not to touch Zhu Xuan and cuts it in half with a giant sword, completely destroying it. Zhu Xuan, Ying, and Wei can't believe what they're seeing. Xiu starts to take the fight seriously and unleash his true power. He smiles and says that if this is really the power of the nascent soul, it's ridiculous. Who hasn't killed a couple of nascent souls before? Xiao, holding his sword, smiles and thinks that with the support of the innate body sword, he was able to gain a new understanding of the 10,000 transformed into one movement. Before, he had to rely on the large hand condensed from spiritual energy to strengthen the sword's power, but now he only needs to condense the runes to strengthen it. Changfeng says that Xiao is too arrogant for such a lucky strike. Changfeng summons several skeletons and says he will teach what it really means to be a strong guy. All the monsters turn and head towards Xiao, who remains calm and still. Xiao summons his swords and asks who this strong guy that Changfeng said he would show is. In seconds, Xiao destroys all the skeletons at once, showing the abyss in power between the two. Changfeng doesn't understand where this power is coming from. Just with the pressure of the energy coming from Xiu's movements, Bai and Linking already feel threatened. Ji creates a barrier and asks Muhan to stay behind it, as the energy Xiao is using is dangerous even for those nearby. Wei creates a barrier to protect himself from the pressure, but he can't believe that Xiao defeated hundreds of undead at the golden core level with just one blow. Ying says she has never seen a golden core man with so much power. If they can conquer him, they will surely win the 10,000 Dao festival. Xiao begins to walk among the remains of the skeletons, asking if that was really all Changfeng had to offer after causing all this trouble. Xiao says he will give him one last chance. Xiao asks for Zhu Xuan to be released. Changfeng doesn't like this, as he realizes that Xiao is very close to Zhu Xuan. He begins to think that she had rejected him in the past just because of Xiao. This makes him even more angry. Then he starts to say that he will show Zhu Xuan what happens when you choose the wrong person. The chains around Zhu Xuan's body begin to tighten more. Xiao yells for him to stop and starts to advance quickly. Xiao cuts all the chains with a stroke of his sword, freeing Zhu Xuan. This scares Changfeng. Zhu Xuan is in a lot of pain. She tries to summon her swords, but she is exhausted. As she falls, Xiu calls her and quickly holds her in the air and asks if she is really okay. The atmosphere between the two becomes pleasant. Zhu Xuan can't say a word, as all this is incredible to her. After a few seconds, she averts her gaze, embarrassed, and says, "She is fine." Bai says that this time, Xiao got it right. Linkwing is happy, and says she can see from afar that her master is blushing. Muhan finds all this beautiful. On the other hand, Ji runs with a broken heart, calling for her master. Xiao, with Zhu Xuan in his arms, holds his sword with just one of his hands. He calls Changfeng and says that his last chance is over, so it's time for death. Zhao, like lightning, moves quickly, piercing Changfeng's body with his sword, making him scream in pain. Changfeng starts to feel weaker and weaker and thinks that this can't really be happening to him. After a few seconds, he falls to the ground without any strength. Xiao smiles while holding Zhu Xuan in his arms. She is speechless with such strength shown. She turns to him and calls him. Xiao puts on a serious face and thinks that this time she must have been impressed with his beauty, but then she asks if it's not time for him to let her go. Xiao is speechless and says yes. As soon as she puts her feet on the ground, she turns around and says that Zhao's movements were really good. She wishes to practice with him when she has time. Xiao smiles and says that this is a unique special ability he just created, not to mention that it was someone like Changfeng who just entered the nascent soul stage. However, even if Xiao meets some deity out there, he is still capable of fighting on equal terms. Ying hears this and wonders if this is really true. If Xiao is indeed capable of fighting against a deity, she turns and asks Wei how much she can trust this. Wei defeats the last monster in front of him and says that the movement Xiao just used should be the 1,000-to-1 transformation of the current sword cultivator. However, from the way he used his spiritual energy to the sword itself, Wei says he was not able to see through it. Ying is impressed by this, as even Wei was not able to see. Wei says that at the moment he is at the peak of the nascent soul, but to be honest, Wei says that if he faced Xiao at this moment, he fears he would not be able to win. Ying is completely surprised by these words, and starts to imagine Zhao's face while thinking that there is such great talent in their country. The invaders, noticing that Xiao killed their leader in seconds, begin to wonder what they should do now. But now it's too late. Xiao starts to walk towards them with a terrifying aura, asking if they really wanted to run away, if they thought they could enter the Hongmeng sect, do all this and leave like that. The men start to tremble in front of Xiao. They fall to their knees on the ground, throwing away their weapons, saying that they were deceived by their elders. Everyone there was begging for forgiveness and mercy. Xiao stops in front of everyone, along with Zhu Xuan. The invaders gather in front of them and ask for forgiveness. But before Xiao could say anything, a big explosion happens. Ji and Muhan are startled by the noise. Zhu Xuan realizes that it came from the first peak. She screams that Master Zhang he was in danger, so she should do something, but Xiao yells at her to calm down. She didn't need to run there because they were already there. A person with demonic energy approaches quickly. 2 people arrive there. This person is the leader of the Lunar and Solar Ghost sect, call it Old Demon. His power is in the Nasansul, 5th level. In his hand was Zhang He. The demon says that they captured their leader and destroyed the mountain protection formation. He asks for the rest of them not to resist and become prisoners at once. That way, they would suffer less. The demon says that if they don't do that, they will have the same fate as their leader, and strikes Zhang He, making him bleed from the mouth and fall unconscious to the ground. This makes everyone completely angry. The invaders who were begging for their lives now celebrated that their leader had arrived to save everyone. The demon turns to them and asks where Chang Feng was. One of their disciples says he was killed. The demon doesn't understand and asks how they killed him. The disciple says it's true, he saw it with his own eyes. The demon starts to laugh and says, "That's ridiculous." Even a sect as weak as the Hongmeng sect was still able to kill Chang Feng. The demon asks who it was and why he didn't know that there were people at the nascent soul level in the Hongmeng sect. The disciple points to Xiao, saying it was him. Xiao says he doesn't care if it was him or not. The demon looks at Xiao and says he's just a little insect at the 7th level of the Golden Core, and yet dares to be so ignorant between life and death. The demon says that if it was really Xiao who killed Chang Feng, he would kneel and lick his feet. Xiao smiles and says he can kneel then. The demon asks what kind of dirty tricks they used to do such a thing. In seconds, Xiao lunges at the demon, hitting him, throwing him several meters back. Xiao says that if he spoke, the demon probably wouldn't believe it, so he prefers to show how he killed Chang Feng. The demon lying on the ground says that if that's the case, then it's fine. He gets up, takes his sword, and says he would kill Zhao at that very moment. A huge energy accumulates in the sword and he releases it towards Zhao. The two clash their swords. The pressure caused by this throws the people who were nearby far away. Zhu Xuan creates a barrier and asks everyone to stay behind it. The invaders are injured just by the pressure of the blows exchanged by the demon and Xiao. From a distance, Ji and Muhan watch. Ji begins to analyze that it seems Xiao can clearly see his movements. The Luoyun sword that Xiao had picked up is a low-class spiritual sword of the celestial level that, if performed with the 10,000 kilometers technique, should be able to reach the power of a mid-class celestial level. Ji realizes that the demon's sword is superior to that, possibly being of the highest class. As the two fought, Ji fears, because now it can really be dangerous. The demon tries to hit Xiao, but he dodges and jumps back and asks for Zhu Xuan's swords on loan. Xiao uses his power and calls them immediately. He also uses his flexible swords. Ji is impressed seeing that her master is using the 7-star exorcist sword formation technique. At that moment, Xiao was surrounded by a dense and constant aura. His swords were ready and positioned. Xiao looks at the demon and says that no matter what kind of deity he believes himself to be, the outcome is already decided. He would die today. Ji can't contain her joy, as the 7-star exorcist sword formation is a high-class sword formation of the celestial level. When the 7 swords are completed, its power can come close to the immortal level. Ji, without thinking twice, throws her sword to Xiao, saying that if he needs it, he can use it. Ying is impressed by this, as she had seen this sword formation only in ancient books, but never imagined she would see its true form personally. She takes her sword and throws it to Xiao, saying that if he's going to form the 7-star exorcist sword formation, he can also use her sword, the highest quality terrestrial level dragon sword. Ying thinks this is a great opportunity to gain Xiao's trust. Now everything was ready. Xiao had the best swords in his possession. He points his finger at the demon and says he would exterminate the existence of the lunar and solar ghost sect today. Xiao begins his attack. The demon smiles and asks Xiao if he really thinks he wouldn't be able to win just because he had some extra swords. The demon fearlessly confronts Xiao's attack, but as soon as he tries to block it, he realizes he won't be able to. The attack bypasses his block and leaves the demon badly wounded, but he doesn't give up and asks Xiao not to get conceited too quickly. The demon says that no matter how great Xiao's abilities are, he wouldn't leave there alive today. The demon uses a spell and says it's time to make use of this pile of trash. He attacks his companions. The few who were still alive ask why their leader was doing this to them. the demon begins to take the energy and blood from all his companions. Xiao gets angry at this and says that he didn't even spare his own companions and therefore would die. The demon rushes towards Xiao with everything he has, while Xiao also charges with his 7 swords. Ji and Muhan are scared because the demon managed to block Xiao's attack. He smiles, saying that his sword can be tempered using blood, and now it was at the 2nd immortal level. As long as there are people in the world for him to kill, he will become stronger. Xiao gives a small laugh, and his energy begins to take the form of a dragon and becomes denser. Xiao starts attacking with all this power. The demon's block starts to break and he becomes desperate, asking how it is possible for the 7-star exorcist sword formation to have all this power. Xiao thinks that if it were a normal 7-star exorcist sword formation, it would be harder to win so overwhelmingly. However, the formation of the sword blessed by the innate body sword is different. It not only strengthens the power of the swords themselves, but also amplifies certain qualities of the swords. The green and purple swords of Zhushuan have been tempered by the violet Qi of Hongmeng and can suppress the demonic aura of the demonic sword. Xiao hadn't realized that the Ying dragon sword, after being catalyzed by the sword formation, had actually developed a powerful dragon Qi, and this is so powerful that it can destroy demonic energy. Xiao, while running through the fight, looks at Ying and thinks that, by the way, she is not a bad person. The demon was completely helpless and starts to try to run. However, Xiao's speed was greater. He came quickly surrounded by his dragon-shaped energy. The demon looks back and says that his master is an elder of the lunar and solar sect in Longyanshang. He shouts at Xiao that if he dares to kill the demon, his master will definitely not let Xiao go unpunished. Xiao looks at the demon and says he doesn't care, he's going to die. Xiao attacks, and the demon starts screaming in pain. Behind a rock was Wang Na, the elder of the 6th peak and traitor of the sect. He can't believe that the demon was being defeated by Xiao, who had this overwhelming strength. As soon as Xiao looks, Wang Na quickly hides behind the rock. Wang Na puts his hand on his head, desperate, not believing that Xiao was able to kill the demon so easily. Wang Na starts saying that the lunar and solar sect is a sect that really has the power to govern during the realm of separation. With this, it can be said that it is the supreme lord of the dragon realm. Wang Na points out that even if the power of all the sects of the Qin dynasty were combined, they still couldn't even come close to the lunar and solar sect. Wang Na was trembling behind the rock, saying that now it's really all over. Xiao is dead, the Hongmeng sect is dead, and he would also die. As he was saying these things, Xiao appears behind him and asks if that's really going to happen. At this point, Xiao has a murderous aura and hatred. He starts to grab his sword and says he doesn't know what the future really holds for him and the Hongmeng sect, but he knows what Wang Na's future is. Wang Na starts screaming in terror as he turns his face. Xiao says that Wang Na's future doesn't exist because he's going to die there and now. Only Wang Na's screams are heard as Xiao's sword drips blood on the ground. Xiao turns to everyone and says that it's finally over. Xiao was in the middle of 2 piles of skeletons, saying that this was really a great loss. The sect leader was being healed. Everyone was around him. Xiao approaches and asks what his condition is. Muhan says that Zhang He's heart was injured, but he would survive, but he should rest for years to fully recover. This scares people because the leader would not be able to take care of the sect members. Zhushuan steps forward and says that, in the current situation, the Hongmeng sect cannot be without a leader, so they should choose an interim leader as soon as possible. From afar, Ying says she recommends that Xiao become the sect leader. Zhushuan turns to Ying, greets her, and asks who she is. Ying bows, showing respect, and introduces herself, saying it is an honor for her to meet the people of the Hongmeng sect. She also introduces her bodyguard Wei Ju. Muhan and Ji are surprised. Xiao kneels before her and gives his greetings to the Royal Highness, the 3rd princess. The other members are shocked to learn that she was the princess. Ying smiles and goes closer to Xiao, saying that it seems he knows who she really is. Xiao, with her sword in his hand, says that he just made some assumptions based on the dragon energy in her sword, and as soon as he heard her name, he was sure of her identity. The people around say that Xiao is indeed a wise person. Ying says that since he knows who she is, she will be honest. She was there to invite the Hongmeng sect to participate in the Grand Dao Festival, which will take place in the capital in 6 months. Again, the younger ones are surprised by the invitation. Ying begins to explain that the Grand Dao Festival is a festival led by the royal family of the Qin dynasty. This event is a competition among the various forces of the territory to select the strongest. Ying points out that this time is different from other times, as now the participants are not only limited to the immortal cultivation forces of Jianghu, but also include the aristocratic families of the Great Qin realm, which is the most prosperous since the foundation of the dynasty. Ying turns to Xiao and looks intently at him and asks if, by any chance, the Hongmeng sect accepts to participate in the 10,000 Dao Festival, Xiao would be willing to lead his team. Ying points out that she is offering an unmined mine of spirit stones, as well as a bunch of magical weapons and cultivation resources. Ying continues talking and explains that, according to the rules of this event, the winner will receive the title of Gozong and will work at the service of His Majesty, and all the resources of the entire Qin dynasty will be of the Hongmeng sect if Xiao wins. Xiao listens attentively and starts saying that even the great families are involved, according to what Ying said. Xiao begins to remember that he heard that the Lord of Luoyun City was the greatest of the Luoyun sect. As soon as Xiao found this out, he was a bit strange, as he was surprised that a state official had such a deep connection with an immortal cultivator. Ying smiles and says that it seems Xiao had already understood everything, but she would emphasize it anyway. Xiao interrupts her and says that, in his view, all this is just a big maneuver to bring down all the great families of the world. Everyone is completely shocked by these words. Xiao continues talking that, from what he knows, when the Qin dynasty was first established, it depended on the support and sponsorship of the aristocratic families to maintain the government. Since then, hundreds and thousands of years have passed, and this pattern has become a routine. The court relies on the support of this family to make decisions on important matters, and now the power and greed of the families have become a threat to the royal family, right? Xiao points out that the establishment of Gozong, under the command of the emperor, is to divide the resources of the families and weaken them. Ying lowers her gaze and says that, without a doubt, Elder Xiao is really a talented person in politics. She bows again before Xiao and says that she just saw him show tremendous strength and kill 2 nascent soul masters alone. Xing Yue was very impressed. She asks once again for Xiao to participate in this 10,000 Dao festival. Zhi and Muhan can't believe that the third princess of the Great Qin realm is bowing before Master Xiao. Xiao looks at the princess and raises a point. He says if the princess is so honest, she wasn't afraid that some sects have secret connections with the aristocratic families and denounce them. Ying says that this matter is not a secret, after she informed this matter to her father, and he gave the approval. She herself ordered that the news be spread, and the great families should have known, but they prevented it. Ying thinks they also want to take advantage of this opportunity to submit the royal family and make their power even greater. Xiao smiles and thinks that this is indeed a good game that combines yin and yang. The third princess of Qin is a talented person who can make good use of it. Xiao looks intently at the princess and says that if she really wants him to lead something, these rewards are not enough. Weiju starts to get annoyed and tells Xiao not to be so greedy. Ying asks Weiju to be quiet, as she is in charge of this situation. She looks at Xiao and says that if he has a request, there is no problem in saying it. Xiao, without hesitation, says that his request is simple. Ying should accept him as her master. Ying doesn't quite understand why. A system window opens and shows Xiaoying's attributes: name, Ying, identity, third princess of the Qin realm, comprehension, 100, root, 55, talent, unactivated dominant supreme body, activation condition, ascend to the throne, absorb dragon energy. Seeing this, Xiao thinks that the dominant supreme body is something he had seen in an ancient book that said, people who succeed can unite the energy of the world into one, and not only practice with twice the result and half the effort, but also have the blessing of dragon energy that will allow using abilities in a special way. After this proposal that Xiao made, the bodyguard Weiju gets angry and says that this is an outrageous audacity of Xiao and prepares to attack. But again, Ying interrupts him and asks him to wait. Ying goes to Xiao, showing a lot of respect, and asks why he wanted her as his disciple. Xiao smiles and says that the reason is obvious. She is a very smart and talented person. This leaves Ying completely shocked. She asks if he really liked her talent. She begins to remember her childhood. As she grew up, she was the most knowledgeable in martial arts among her brothers and the best in poetry, books, music, and literature. However, even with all this, she was never as good as her brothers in cultivation, and for this reason, her father didn't value her, giving all the love and attention to her brothers while she felt alone. However, she kept trying, but never got the slightest recognition. She looks at Xiao with a look of astonishment, thinking that it was the first time someone said they are interested in her talent. Xiao looks at her and asks why she has that look of astonishment and doubting his words. Xiao asks if she wants to know the benefits of the seventh peak. Xiao snaps his fingers and calls Ziji, who appears quickly, smiling, saying she was right there. Xiao says he would like to introduce the benefits of the seventh peak to the princess. Ji begins to explain that if the princess joins the seventh peak, not only do we have the guidance of personalized training from Master Xiao, but they also have a third-level alchemist who provides pills at any time. The elixir shop under her name makes a lot of money every day, and the funds are abundant. The princess is impressed with this. Ji emphasizes that the most important thing is that she will have the opportunity to be initiated and trained by Master Xiao himself. No matter how talented she is, if the princess joins the seventh peak, the journey to immortality will have no obstacles. Xiao smiles and confirms that it is all really true. Ying, a little shy, asks if it really doesn't matter what the talent is. Ji smiles and responds, "That's right, it doesn't matter what the talent is." Ji takes the lead again and emphasizes that before she entered the seventh peak, she was just a slave there. And everyone said she was useless with no talent whatsoever for cultivation. But even so, Xiao chose her and welcomed her to the seventh peak. And now, in less than 6 months, she's already at the second level of foundation creation. The other disciples of the Hongmeng sect say it's really true, as before they looked down on her, and some say they didn't even know who she was. However, now she has surpassed all the sect's disciples, and as the princess herself can see in the competition today, Ji was so powerful that she dominates all the pride of the sect. Ying is shocked and thinks that Ji showed all this strength and was a simple slave in the past. Ying asks Xiao what he saw in Ji that made him accept her as his disciple if she was just a slave before. Ji hears these words and becomes worried, thinking that the only reason her master accepted her as a disciple was that she was the only one left when his other disciples left. However, Ji thinks that her master wouldn't say something like that. He will make up a story saying he was attracted to her character. Xiao puts his hand on Ji's shoulder and starts to say that it was because of the talent Ji had. As expected, an elder looks for strong people as his disciples. Ji is paralyzed when she hears this. Xiao looks around and asks if there is anyone present who does not recognize Ji's talent in swordsmanship. Everyone was silent. Xiao turns to the princess and says that, as he said before, he is impressed by her talent. Xiao emphasizes that he fully trusts her and that she will surely become the best in this area. Ying again doubts herself but feels embraced by Xiao's words. She smiles, kneels, and bows at Xiao's feet, calls him master, and asks him to accept her humble reverence. Weiju doesn't like seeing the princess kneeling before someone else. Xiao holds Ying by the shoulders, calls her a disciple, and asks her to stand up. The system window appears for Xiao, congratulating him on successfully recruiting a disciple, and his reward will be tenfold, and will obtain the Yin-Yang 5 Elements body technique, a first-level product of its class, and a Hutian spirit. Energy runs through Xiao's arm, and he wonders what this Hutian spirit could be. He feels like this spirit is connected with the flexible finger sword, and from what he is feeling at the moment, now one of them seems to be in sync with Xiao's thoughts. He says he has heard that if a magical weapon is tempered differently, thousands of years can give birth to a sword spirit that can attack and practice independently. He didn't expect this system to have the capability to install one directly inside Xiao. This is really amazing. Weiju starts yelling at the princess, saying she can't accept Xiao as her master. Probably the princess is confused, but Ying just asks him to stop talking and explains that she knows very well what he was going to say, so there is no need to say anything more. Weiju sighs and asks how he would explain this to His Majesty when he returns. Ying yells and says they need to go back to the previous topic. Now that she is a disciple of the Hongmeng sect, she sincerely recommends Elder Xiao as the interim leader of the sect. Zhu Xuan agrees and says she believes Elder Xiao is the most suitable candidate for this. Ying says that in addition, the Qin royal family will also support Elder Xiao. Suddenly Zhang He gathers his strength and starts to say in a weak voice that, in this case, he would leave the Hongmeng sect in the hands of Elder Xiao. After saying this, Zhang He starts coughing because he is still very weak. Mu Han holds him and asks him not to strain himself. Zhu Xuan starts to name him and says that, as Xiao has met everyone's expectations. Before she finished speaking, Xiao raises his hand smiling and says he has an objection. No one understands what that was. Zhang. He says he is dying. This is the time to hand over the Hongmeng sect to them, the young ones. Don't choose a new interim leader of the Hongmeng sect. Choose a new sect master. Xiao starts to say that he likes to be free and make some enemies from time to time. Now that he has the third princess as a disciple, his identity becomes even more complicated. Acting as both the interim leader of the sect and the sect master is not suitable for him. Xiao takes Zhu Xuan by the waist and pulls her close to his body, leaving her a little taken aback. Xiao says he would like to recommend Zhu Xuan, the celestial maiden, to become the new leader of the Hongmeng sect. Bai and Linking are surprised by this and ask if Zhu Xuan would really accept this. Feng, the elder of the first peak, stands up and says he heard everything Xiao said and completely agrees with all of it. He emphasizes that, as Xiao himself said before, it is not suitable for him to be the master of the third princess and have another status so controversial. Feng says that in the past, when Zhu Xuan was only 14 years old, she accidentally entered the stone room and read the celestial book of Hongmeng and learned part of her future. Maybe that was God's will. Feng says that according to ancestral teachings, only the sect master can read the celestial book of Hongmeng. Xiao is surprised by this because he didn't know. So he asks what it is. Zhu Xuan just looks at it and sighs a little and starts to say that Elder Feng's words reminded her. The celestial book of Hongmeng records the future of the Hongmeng sect. Since they can't decide who will replace Zhang He, let the celestial book of Hongmeng decide. She calls Xiao to follow her, but Ying goes to him and says that she and Weiju need to visit other immortal sects, and, for this reason, she needs to leave now. Zhao asks her to wait. He says she just became his disciple and, unfortunately, they didn't have time to prepare her for the learning ceremony. Zhao takes one of his swords and asks Ying to take the sword with her and use it to defend herself. Ying takes the sword and asks why a flexible finger sword. Xiu smiles and says that this sword has a spirit, so it doesn't need to be controlled with sword techniques. It can fight on its own. Ying is impressed that such a small sword is so powerful. Xiao turns and says that the sword is not that strong. Weiju sighs again with jealousy and says that the princess already has him for protection. Why would she need another sword? Xiao hears this and says from afar that this weapon is capable of killing someone in the nascent soul in seconds. Weiju becomes worried and asks if that is true because he is currently in the nascent soul. Ying just laughs at this situation. After some time, Zhu Xuan and Zhao start to enter a cave. Zhao asks Zhu Xuan why she brought him there and if it was for him to read the celestial book. Zhu Xuan places her hand on the door and a great energy starts to come out of there. She starts to say that not long ago, Xiao was gravely injured and near death. But since then, he has made great progress. Not only did he cross the golden core, but he also gained 2 talented disciples. She turns with a more serious face and asks what really happened. Xiao smiles and says it was nothing much. In the past, he just gained an infinite gold pill. He relied on this pill to survive and also to overcome the golden core. Zhao, deep down, wonders if Zhu Xuan is testing him in some way. Zhao starts to suspect that Zhu Xuan thinks he was dominated by something. Zhu Xuan turns to the front and asks if that was really all. The doors open, the 2 enter, and in the middle of the hall there is a strong energy. In the center of this energy there was an item. Xiao asks what it was. Zhu Xuan replies that this is the celestial book of the Hongmeng sect. She says that this book was inherited from the first generation of the sect master of Hongmeng, and only the person who can succeed the master can awaken it. Zhu Xuan emphasizes that, after awakening it, the person who did it can see the fate of the Hongmeng sect for the next 100 years. Xiao just looks at it as she approaches the object. Xiao starts to put his hand together with Zhu Xuan's hand. He wonders how something so strange can exist. Zhu Xuan says that just by inserting spiritual energy into it, the celestial book of Hongmeng will emit its own judgment. Zhao starts to use his power. Zhu Xuan emphasizes that if the person is qualified to lead the Hongmeng sect, the celestial book of Hongmeng will respond. A few seconds pass, and energy starts to come toward Zhao, and the book floats close to his hand. Zhu Xuan looks at it and smiles. She is happy and says that surely Xiao is the person who should take over the Hongmeng sect. Suddenly the book falls back, and they are surprised.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Thank you.